Astralis' history, and RMR's has not been great. It's four majors in a row that they've now missed. So I'm sure that they are praying that they get like that one win in Blast, or just beat Virtus.pro that head-to-head. That's effectively all that's going to do it. They're going to be fine. Or even like they take the first upset against Vitality, that's going to put them in a place where they're going to be safe. Even there's a world like they do well enough, they can make it straight into stage 3. That's 150 points gap. If they go top 2 again, if they have a really good result, that could be possible.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. Skin Place. Sell items now.
It was more than a game. It was everything. Every single emotion on display. Not a moment missed. This was CSGO through the lens.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Counter-Strike fans across the globe, welcome back to another episode of HLTV Confirmed. I want to thank our lovely sponsor, Skin Place. If you're in the marketplace for some skins, to sell some skins, head over to Skin Place. And Anthros, they do chairs, and we sit down for long portions of our lives. So maybe that'll help your back problems. I know you've got them, because we all do. All right, well, we are back with probably, I would say, our earliest episode of all time. We're making records on this Tuesday. Have we done an episode earlier than 11 a.m.?
Maybe the device one. No, that was also like
that was early.
12ish.
It was like 12ish. Yeah.
Because I was having a beer, and I wouldn't have a beer before
12.
Before 12. I mean, I would,
early.
but probably wouldn't.
Fair enough.
Unlikely, let's say.
I've done them earlier in a different time zone.
Yeah.
Like when I was in Australia, I think like 2, 3, 4 a.m. we were looking at, but that doesn't count because it was CET or CEST. It was still normal for you guys. Prophecy, Striker here, Lucas is producing, so your internet should be fine. Mine will be questionable. We'll see. I'm just on hotel Wi-Fi. I don't have a wide connection. I just got to Copenhagen last night, so we've got the group stages of Blast Lisbon. Oh, and of course, Prof disappears for a split second there. We've got the group stages of Blast Lisbon taking off in the Blast studios that are going to be starting tomorrow. So it's media today, which is why we're starting early. I can't do later in the afternoon. I have to go record some media in a couple of hours, and then I have to go to rehearsal. So that answers the questions for the people in the Twitch chat who are curious at why it's at 11 a.m. There you go. It's quite simple. We need to be flexible. I'm not available 24/7 around the clock, unfortunately, to do podcasts. I do my best.
Yeah.
I do my best. I'm talking all the time. So, yeah.
Honestly, not too bad for me. I feel like shit. So I do this podcast, straight back to bed.
You got the land flu?
Out of bed, podcast, into bed. This is the plan for the day. I don't know. I guess so, kind of. Even though I barely spent any time there. So
yeah, but people that you were hanging around, or people that you would be hanging around who are hanging around with other people, have definitely gotten sick. So
people hanging around has to be canceled forever.
Yeah. Just go back to isolation. We'll go to the pandemic times again. All right, gentlemen. Well, we've got, about 2 hours to talk through everything that's been happening in recent times. There's lots to talk about today. Obviously, EPL Season 21 just came to a close. We've also got some recent news, some more VRS changes. We're going to be doing the regular stuff, Skinionaire, what are the odds, as well as Fix Your Sit. So there's a lot to talk about. We're going to be doing a bit of a mid-season check-in as well. Go look at what are the odds that we've done so far this season, the outstanding ones, see how they're aging. and also take a look at who could potentially be qualifying for the major, because April 7th, we've been talking about a lot. That's going to be the cutoff date for the teams to get invited for the major or having to play in the online major regional qualifiers. So let's get stuck into things. I just linked you boys a video that was through the FlyQuest vlog that they put out. FlyQuest have obviously made some roster changes. Dexter, which we're familiar with his stint over within Europe, but obviously for Renegades in the past, Greyhound, and now most recently FlyQuest, leading the Australian team, has been removed. And they are bringing in Nettik, who's from New Zealand. I want to make that clear. We can't be roping the New Zealanders in with the Australians, guys. I know it doesn't matter to you guys out there in the European land, but it matters for the Australians and the New Zealanders. And Inz is going to be moving back to that leadership role. And the reason I bring up that vlog is I want to give some mad respect to Mr. Urcast. I don't think I knew the man had that in him. In that vlog, it starts with him being quite harsh on them outside, which is probably between maps. And then if you go deeper into the video, just before the 7-minute mark, he's also given him a bit of a shellacking post there, Tyloo loss. So I guess the first question is, who's not shocked about this move? Or can people hear this?
Just video. Okay. I mean, I think people can see quite a bit. Honestly, definitely was shocked when it came through. Wasn't really the player we'd see removed based on, I mean, obviously his tenure in European teams and just like historically in Australian teams been like a standout player, right? So you don't really see him as the problem, and you can see like a bunch of other players having some ups and downs and like individually struggling. But I think this vlog puts things a bit in perspective. I think answers some questions at least that I had.
Yeah, I think interesting with the later part in that video, the bit that's, I think I said it was like at 6:53 or whatever. The part where he's talking about, it's different every day. They don't look at their mistakes, talking about their ego, taking the job for granted. It's a lot of things that you would hope not to be seeing from a team from an underdog region, which is probably the exact opposite to somebody like the Mongolz, which are the best example from a team from a small region, and they're doing very well. They seem like guys who can be a little bit cocky now because they play some great Counter-Strike, but they're always very humble, feel like they're always happy to be there. They definitely are constantly improving. Every loss, they're like, yep, well, that's a lesson. So it's quite the interesting contrast, probably a cultural thing. I think Australia is probably more in line with the USA or Canada or Britain, which are all also quite terrible at Counter-Strike as far as rosters are concerned. So that's not too surprising overall. But Nettik coming in, I'm glad that he's getting another opportunity. Obviously, Talon didn't work out, but he's been a bit of an up-and-comer from the Oceanic region for some time now. So I'm glad that he gets a chance on this team. We'll have to see how they distribute the roles and how things work out there. But adding more firepower, it seems. But overall, I don't know what this... You would assume this is going to have a dramatic effect because Inz is going to go back to leading. But outside of that, that's all I can really feel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, kind of the what you pointed out from the vlog is coach not happy with not what's on the server, but more like what's happening outside of the actual officials that is leading to how they're playing, right? And if the coach is complaining, then who is he complaining to? Maybe to individual players, but mainly has to be like between him and the IGL that something was not working. So then the Dexter Urcast thing makes sense why Dexter would be departing the lineup essentially, because obviously a lot of people can also point fingers at Liaz, who I'm not really impressed by him for a while now. But yeah, I think this makes sense. Just going back to Inz, who led before, and trying out some like fresh blood. And ultimately, I mean, you pointed out this a few times, like the amount of trips back home that happened for FlyQuest in this year already, and then comparing that to someone like, obviously Mongolz skipped one event because they were literally in hospitals, but other than that, they seem to be like, yeah, we're just playing because we have nothing else to do, and this is the dream. Kind of reminding of like the Brazilians when they are in SK and just started going to like Luminosity. Even they're just like, yeah, let's go to everything, play as much as we can, and like it doesn't really matter what else is happening in our lives. It's just Counter-Strike because it's the one opportunity we have. And I think like obviously FlyQuest had 27,000 opportunities so far, playing at every practically event that ESL puts on, whereas there is a qualifier for or an invite for an Australian like Asian team. So I don't think they feel the same level of urgency anymore.
I also think it's a factor that they're part of a bigger organization now, as opposed to just Greyhound, which was just a bunch of mates, right? So the fact that they are part of an org that is going to be wanting results, that applies pressure. And if things aren't working, they're going to be feeling that pressure from the top down. And we know that they were the reason that FlyQuest pick them up is, hey, we have this team that is almost guaranteed a major spot every single time. But you're not looking just to have a team for the sake of having a team. You want a team that can compete. Right? You want to actually be able to tussle with some of the world's best, and that's definitely not the conversation at the moment around FlyQuest.
I mean, ultimately, when you look at it, they're not guaranteed a spot anymore, right?
No.
If they're going to be losing to Tyloo,
then
they're not guaranteed a spot. So that's like, hey,
I mean,
let's do
well,
something.
in this new system, I was going to say this. If anything, they are incredibly guaranteed for a spot at the moment. But
who's going to beat them in Australia, right?
That's my point. Yeah.
Nobody. And Australia could still have 2 slots, but we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump into the next one here. This is OG winning an event, and I've been a generational OG hater, really. Ever since they came into Counter-Strike, I don't think they've really had competitive rosters. The new team at the moment is mainly Danish players. What is it? Nikodos, Krizen, and Buzz in there, alongside of Fiku. He's still going, and Spook the Swede. But the reason that I bring this up is because they jumped to 23rd in the VRS with their CCT win, which is huge because that means they're now in the ballpark to potentially getting some invitations to events with extended formats or even into qualifiers to be able to play for some of these bigger events. So I just wanted to note that one.
Yeah, I mean, they came to the final of the Bucharest qualifier and they lost to Apogee. However, what is that? Yeah,
Apogee. Yeah,
the Polish guys. So they were very close to getting a spot straight up there, and they obviously that was an insanely big qualifier, right? So they had to get a bunch of wins to get to that spot, even though they lost the best of 5 in the end. It still added up to combined with the CCT win that they are now like looking to be in the range of some invites.
Okay, that's that done. All right, let's get into some fun stuff. VRS, everybody loves it. We'll try and keep this one as succinct as possible, but it's important because these changes constantly going on. And I think one of the keys, Striker, maybe you see a bit of this discourse and dialogue going on too. When these changes come out, people think these changes are for now. These changes are not until what, next year or
depends on what events you're talking about, but yeah.
So we're going to be seeing minimum invites up to 20 teams. That was from 16. This is for tier 1 events. So previously we can just use Bucharest or we could use Cluj as a perfect example. These are 16 team events where the tournament organizer just invites 16 teams. Traditionally, they're going to attempt to get teams 1 to 16. But then if, let's say 5 doesn't accept and 7 doesn't accept, it shuffles down the rankings until they fill that out. That number for 2027 and onwards is going to be pushed up to 20 plus teams.
26.
2026 and onwards?
Well, I mean, it's a year ahead, so...
Okay, 2026 and
or tier one, yeah. I mean, this is a tier 1 requirement anyway, so that's the only team, the tournaments that it applies to.
But wouldn't they have TOs have already put formats in for some events in 2026?
But that's why it's a year ahead, right? Because they added a little line to the. Okay. They added a little
showing
line
to people in chat. Sorry to distract you.
To the rulebook, which basically says like the version of the rulebook that applies is the one that was current as of the additional information deadline, which is a year before the tournament begins. And the additional information is where all the format stuff, you have to announce all the format stuff, all the teams that are invited and all that stuff. That's effectively the reason, so they don't force changes to events that are already past that deadline, which, might, put TOs under a lot of strain to change what they've already planned and all that stuff, invites to their events, like whatever studios they booked, all that stuff, formats, everything that it might impact, so that basically they're making sure that like whatever change, like significant changes they're making to the rulebook aren't actually going to come into effect to something that's already been planned, in that time.
I mean, just in short, I think the interesting part is like 20 teams, but it doesn't mean 20 teams need to come to LAN. It just needs 20 teams need to be invited either to the event, the LAN part, or the close qualifier part, which essentially means that I think you, Chad, mentioned it, like Cluj as it was would not be able to function because that was just 16 teams direct invite. But Bucharest can function because it's like 12 teams straight invited and 4 teams coming through qualifiers. So then there's a bunch of invites to the close qualifier. Therefore, this format that is used for Bucharest can be used moving forward, but like 16 teams direct invite can't be used. So it's either doing like a LAN pre-qualifier or like having like a bigger format, because it's also 20 teams is not a format that's like no one's inviting 20 teams to a LAN. That's just weird. Not really helpful for formats.
I think
sorry, Striker.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like basically the minimum requirement you basically have to do to run like a 16-team LAN would be, let's say you do a 10-team like the 16-team LAN, 10 teams go straight to the LAN, right? 10 teams are straight invited, and then you have, or let's say 12 teams are straight invited, and then you have additional 8 teams invited to the close qualifier so that you fulfill the 20-team requirement. And in the close qualifier, either you can just have those 8 teams play for the last 4 spots, or you can have additional open qualifier spots, to make it bigger, to make it open, whatever, all that stuff, But effectively, that's like the bare minimum. You just, unless you want to host a LAN that is bigger than 16 teams, you have
which
to have
none of them are incentivized to do.
Exactly. I mean, at the moment we see, ESL moved away from the big EPL format, even to the other extreme where it's only 8 teams on LAN now instead of even 16. Before that it was 24. Before that it was 32 even. So it's clear that they don't really see enough of a reward for having that many teams on LAN. So I would imagine that that's the direction that let's say PGL, who also didn't announce a qualifier for Cluj that was supposed to be straight invites, and they can actually technically run it that way because the update only came in after that deadline. So Cluj next year can still, which is like February, I think next year, can still function in the way that we saw Cluj function this year. But effectively anything after that has to have either more teams on LAN than 16, or at least 20 teams on LAN, or you have to solve it in a qualifier way.
The long and the short of this, though, because the word that hasn't been said enough, just so people are clear, is this will just be online, right? So the TOs will likely just run these portions that we're talking about online, and then the whatever teams you could invite 15 teams straight, and then you could invite 5 teams and do some dumb online format, and that's all you'd have to do, and just have 1 spot available. So we'll see if the TOs want, because that's the thing. You can very easily just go, okay, 20 teams, and we'll just do something stupid online, right? And just to invite 1 team, and then everything is sorted up other than 1. Or you can try and expand it, which is clearly what Valve are hoping to achieve with something like this. They want to have more teams involved within these formats. Okay, the other key point with this one was the Tier 2 tournaments are also impacted with the invites going from the same point forward. They have to invite teams from lower than rank 12 as of the VRS. So we're talking 13, 14, 15, 16, from that point onwards, which just changed by 4 spots. Before it was 8.
Yeah.
So that one there is
start from 9.
Yep. So that's going to have some impacts on the Tier 2 invitations. Wildcards, this was a big one. So there's a little bit of confusion about this because it said initially when Valve put this out, it said on all rankings, which would imply the regional ones as well. It would be from 12 or lower, which would mean like a team like Liquid, let's say they were 15 on the global VRS, they're probably still going to be second on the Asian VRS, right? Or maybe even first on the Americas VRS. But they adjusted that, so it is global. It must have been a mistake. So global from 12 down, or 13 down. So that one there would have some impacts on something like the Rivals event that is going to be run right now by that of Blast, but it won't affect them this year. It only affect them into the next year. And I'm glad that they made that change because I don't even. Because this is a bit of a broader topic that we're going to discuss now, because I saw a lot of hoo-ha around Liquid being the team who get the Asian invitation for the Blast Rivals event, and people are like, they don't have any morals over there at Liquid. They're not even an Asian team. How are they accepting this? This is such dog behavior. It's like, okay, first of all, they don't get to choose what region they're from. Their players make that up. Valve have set the rules. So they don't get to pick, are they American or are they Asian? That's going to also be determined by a bunch of different factors we've discussed on the show to length with how they qualify to the major. So in this same situation, the decision of which team was going to get invited for which region of representation was Blast. But Blast is just playing by Valve's rules. So Blast are gone, well, we want as much viewership as possible. If we invite Liquid from the Asian region, it means we can invite a better team from the Americas region, the North American region, so that we can min-max viewership. That makes sense. I'd do that as well if I was Blast.
It's also, the reason is also that Mongolz actually went into the top 4 of the global ones, so that, they couldn't just do Mongolz for the Asian one and then Liquid for the Americas one, because Mongolz already got that invite. And so, what second Asian team do you invite that will bring in viewership, whatever? There's effectively none. So that's why.
And then finally, on top of all this, my problem with this overall is the fact that Valve even allowed this format. This is one of the exceptions or allowances that Valve gave at the start of the year was Blast to be able to run this tournament. They should never have been able to run this tournament with the initial rule set that they put out, which was you had to run a minimum of 3 tier 1 tournaments before you could run an event with as many wildcard slots as this one, right? Because it's kind of an exception.
Yep.
Because they don't want people just to be inviting teams. They want the teams to have to be there by the ranking. So the fact that these even exist in the first place is dumb. Like so they've mitigated the problem for the future. And that it'll probably drive Blast away from wanting to run this, because if you're inviting teams from so far down the ranking, maybe they're not going to bring you the viewership that you were hoping for. So we might see some changes to their formats there.
Yeah, I think
how the fuck is Liquid Asian? They don't have any Asian players, which is technically true. They're actually not Asian, either of them, but like JKS and Nerds fall under the rest of the world / Asia vibe, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting kind of comparison to this wildcard thing is like the way that ESL approached it in the first place, which was, so EPL were technically wildcard events. I'm not even sure that people are aware of that, but that's effectively so that they can invite more wildcard teams. But those wildcard teams are the ones from ECL,
which qualify,
so that there's which is like kind of a qualifier, but the point is kind of like to go to sort out a way where you can make that work with the rules, right? But that's inviting a team that's like somewhere lower down the ranks, to give them an opportunity, to give them that way through the system, from whatever to start in ESC Open to advance to ECL, blah blah blah, to have this progression possible for like teams that want to play in these leagues, right? So that was the reason they made that a wildcard event, but that won't really be affected because all those teams that they will invite from ECL are going to be below top 12 every time, effectively. Like there's no way a top 12 team is ever going to be playing in ECL, so for them it doesn't really affect anything. It would have if it was the original wording of the rule, which was like top 12 in all regions, because like top 12 in Asia is effectively their entire tier. Entirely that's all the teams that play in Asia almost that we actually know of, so that would have been fucked. Kind of the same thing in or like the Americas. I think top 12 you get into the advanced teams or like bottom ECL teams.
You're party astronauts, that type of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So that would have been like, it would have pretty much prevent you from inviting anybody from those regions, because it's like it would be like complete bottom of the barrel teams.
Okay, there's one last little note here that is an important one, because we discussed this, I just think it was the last episode with Dupree, about the seeding that came out, and the Valve had said, okay, you have to do the seeding based off of the VRS at point of invitation. And we were all like, that's dumb. That's a really bad idea. Look at Dallas. The invites came out like several months before. We're talking like 3 to 4 months before. And if you would be using the seeding from that point of invitation, it would be extremely outdated by the time that you get to the event in Dallas. So Valve have amended that. And it's pretty much exactly what you said, right, Striker? They have to, as part of additional information, set a date in advance that the VRS will be used closer to the actual date of the event that would then be used as seeding. Have I missed anything there?
They listen to us.
I'm sure I wasn't the only one who came up with that. Like, it was the most obvious solution ever, and it's more like they didn't come up with it in the first
Just
place.
take the credit. We are changing the global ecosystem. HLTV has all the power.
All me.
It's true, as Yanko learned.
I just want to say one thing, because people were comparing like the Liquid situation to Drillas. And I think there are some similarities. Obviously, they're not an Asian team. Just like Drillas wasn't an Asian team when they went through the Asian qualifiers for the major. I think the biggest difference is that was the major, and this is Blast Mexico. Like, this is just an event. And obviously, both things are bad. I don't think like taking spots from where these spots should go to is a good thing. But it's not a major. Like, majors are like 7 times more important than Blast rivals. That's just facts.
And at the moment, we're going to, like I said earlier, we're going to get into this more later about the teams who are going to be invited to the major based off of the April 7th date. It is very unlikely, I would say impossible, that Mongolz will not be the highest rated team from Asia as per their regional VRS, which means that they will be the Asian representative going straight through. And then Liquid will fall into the category where they will be an American team.
Yeah.
So this problem is only based on this one event that I don't think we'll see the format, or at least I hope we won't see the format of this in the future.
Yeah.
That's a
but it's just like it's like a event from a TO. You could just make an event in America and say, I'm not inviting a single Asian team, right? So this money, it's not the same. It's not the World Championship. I mean, they're kind of wanting to make it so because they're inviting the best teams, but the World Championship is the major, and that is about like having access for everyone. There are so many tournaments that just don't have access to, certain teams won't have access to. That's just how it is, unfortunately.
Yep. Okay, that's essentially the VRS cliff notes for this episode. I'm sure there'll be more once we get to the next one.
Interchanging VRS and the rulebook, by the way? I know we've like, my colleagues have done it. It's essentially
all the same shit.
Can we please not? Because it's two different things.
Okay, so it should be rulebook update.
Yeah,
with impact on the VRS.
You mean major Valve complementary tournament rulebook?
The GitHub
notes.
The GitHub notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the VRS is the ranking. The rulebook is the rulebook that kind of oversees the entire circuit and how it works, right? And what you can, the tournaments and all that stuff, you know.
Names.
And so like people just say fuck VRS when they mean either of those things, and I'm like, what does that mean exactly? Like, what do you not like about this?
Listen,
like, which
semantic stickler?
Right.
Who gives a fuck? We know what we mean, and that's all that matters around here.
No, but you don't know what you mean because it could be either one of those things.
The rulebook,
I don't know what you mean,
has impact on the VRS. And the VRS is king.
Sure.
There you go.
In a very roundabout way.
In a roundabout way. We're going to get into Skinionaire right now. So everybody in chat, type Skin Place right now if you want to enter the draw. I imagine you have a better chance today because we're doing the episode so early on. So Skin Place in chat right now. Now, Dimitri has done this week's quiz about us. So the three of us will collectively be trying to answer these questions. I'm not going to put any rules or restrictions. If you know the answer, if the question's about you, let us know because I imagine Dimitri's made this hard. And I don't like it when Dimitri makes it hard.
I want to hide the chat, but like if we don't know the answers about us, then I don't think the chat can either. So it doesn't really matter. Okay, I'll just focus on this part of the screen anyway.
For people who aren't aware, we're going to do 5 questions. They're going to be multiple choice. Every question that we get correct, we'll move the slider up. There's a $50 skin as the grand prize available for one lucky winner who is typing Skin Place in chat right now, which essentially works as a raffle ticket. If you win, good stuff. If you don't, better luck next time. All right, let's get into this. Who wants to be a Skinionaire? Brought to you by Skin Place. Question number 1. Who has the fewest followers on Twitter, Prof Striker or me? Well, it's not me.
I think it's Striker.
Yep.
It was like a few thousand or something.
Yeah. It's like we're like 5,000 apart.
I'm like 338, I think. What are you?
Yeah, I'm like somewhere at 30. I don't remember now.
172,000.
Wait, I'm 34.
There you go.
What are you? Is that even true?
Let's lock it in.
I mean, we already locked it in. I was just checking what the difference is.
Correct answer, Striker. Okay. Mine doesn't really move. Mine hasn't moved in a while. It just kind of hovers around the same number. So
I think maybe it's the same.
Because you're losing a lot of bots, and then so any gain, just whatever.
I want to get up to 200k before I die. That's my life goal. All right. That was an easy first one. Question number 2. Who has attended the most lands as media or talent, Prof Striker or Sponge? Has to be me, right?
I have to be.
I don't know.
I guess.
I almost literally go to every event.
Must be you.
The only way we wouldn't is in like the last couple of years. Obviously, I didn't do a lot of blast events.
But also, like, Striker did like...
I did like
7-8 events per year.
Years, man, at some point. And I don't know if you did that many in those years.
I've been doing
because it doesn't count your player years. So like from 2013...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, media or talent.
Yeah, I feel like this is a trick question.
Okay, I think it might be me, honestly.
I mean, this has to be
so I have it like 80.
I have no idea.
Do you think when did you start doing events as caster? 2018,
middle of 2016,
16 even. So that's 10 years. I still think you have more, man.
Okay,
you have more than 80, Striker.
Okay, so I'm maybe close to 100 still.
Who are we locking in, Prof?
Okay, let's go with Striker because I feel like this is a Dimitri trick question.
No, lock it in, Striker. Correct answer is.
Okay. Do we know the difference?
Because I don't know. We don't know the difference.
Dimitri did the math.
Yeah.
Prof has around 55 events.
Okay.
Striker has 92 events.
Okay.
And Sponge, you have 110.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not that far off, honestly.
Yeah, I've done a few.
I'm 92, man. That's crazy.
Okay, well, we fucked up on the second one, but let's go. Let's go question number 3. We can maybe recover from here. Jesus. Who has the most posts on Twitter? I feel like it has to be me, doesn't it?
You think so? I would say you have the least.
In the most recent years, I haven't been tweeting a lot, but before I was a bit of a shit poster.
I was also very inactive in different times, so I feel like it can't be me. I don't think it's me. I don't think it can be me. I think it's between you two guys. Prof is pretty spammy sometimes, so I feel like it could be him, but I don't know. I honestly have no idea. I started 2013, but like I wasn't that. Like I had years where I was really active. I had years where I was really not.
Striker. I think it's between the two, me and Chad for sure. But I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's Prof.
Okay. I'm going to go with B, Prof. Correct answer is... There we go. What's the numbers here?
The numbers here is that Prof has 28k, Striker has 18k, and Sponge has 44k.
Whoa.
Jesus Christ.
That's a lot.
What? I don't remember a single Chad tweet.
I don't know, man.
But Prof tweet?
I remember a Prof tweet.
I remember a Prof tweet.
At the moment, anything I tweet ends up fucking Reddit. So I try to tweet less at the moment. It's you can't say anything without these guys putting you up there. So you got to be careful. Okay, well, we're blundering this one, aren't we?
That's good.
Next question.
I do not want to know how Dimitri found the answers for this one, so good luck.
Okay.
Who has sent the most messages on the HLTV work Discord channels accessible to Dimitri? Prof Striker, or, well, it can't be me.
I don't know what access where he has access, so I'm not sure if Prof. It cannot be you.
He has access to news.
What about
confirmed.
your side?
And
what I don't have access to.
And social media.
Okay.
I think that's and some like video media channels as well.
How active are you across those? Because if it's just news and confirmed, it's gotta be me. But like with all the other stuff combined, I don't really post in general.
This is literally the most
I think it's
idiotic
me.
thing
I think
I've
it's probably me. I don't know. In recent years, you've gotten a lot more involved across like different departments and stuff. So
Yes.
I don't know if that's how much that's skewed, but I feel like it'll.
I feel like
it's
you because you get into stupid discussions and go on for like hours.
That's true.
All right, we're going with Striker.
Let's go with me, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'll lock it in Striker.
Okay.
There you go.
How many? I want to know this.
So the numbers are: Sponge has sent 20k messages. Prof has
20k.
Yes.
Where the fuck
I'm a one-line Andy. Like I'm almost one word per line Andy, right? So maybe they count.
Maybe that way.
Okay,
Prof,
let's hear.
you've sent 75,000.
Okay.
And Striker, you've sent 88,000.
Okay, not too bad. Not too different. Okay. Proud of this one.
All right.
All right. Well, we've got 2 out of the 4. This is the last question. Who was tagged most often in HLTV clips posted on Twitter in the last 12 months? Striker, Prof, or Sponge? I don't think it's me. I'm pretty sure it's Striker because Striker is always saying something about the rulebook or about VRS, and it always gets fucking clipped. I feel like it's Striker.
He didn't have many
It could be
bangers.
somewhere even.
Yeah, I think it's Striker.
That would
And
be
I
a lot
remember a Sponge clip, but a Striker clip. I remember a Striker clip. Let's go for Striker. Let's do it.
I have no fucking idea. Honestly, I don't feel like I'm being tagged that much, so it's hard to say.
I don't think it can be me.
Okay.
I'm going with Striker.
I feel like it is you, but I don't know. We haven't had a Prof answer, so it's got to be Prof.
Here we go. We might have fucked up. We've locked
It's
it.
too late. It's too late. It's too late.
I've changed it. I've changed it to
you
Prof.
changed it.
I've
Changed
changed it. Prof.
That's
Okay.
I don't remember this.
Do we know the number here?
Numbers here are that Sponge has been tagged in 39 clips. Striker has done 52 clips. And Prof, you've been in 65 clips.
What the about what? But okay, let's go for it. What is it? 7.5. This is one of the most difficult, but also enjoyable and informative quizzes we've had.
I feel bad for the winner, which is Mandy_O. So you won the giveaway. You win a $7.50 skin. So our people will reach out to your people, and we'll get you a couple of P250 sand dunes or something along those lines. But that is Who Wants to Be a Skinionaire, brought to you by Skin Place. Okay, so that one is... Oh, I just changed it. Oh, sorry, Lucas. Can you change it back? I fucked it up. But we'll get it sorted out. All right, cool. Well, that's done. That's dusted. Let's move into wrapping up EPL Season 21. Vitality, obviously, a dominant, boring grand final. Now, if you're a Vitality fan, don't take that as a dig at Vitality. Vitality are clearly the best team in the world right now. They're head and shoulders above everybody else. But as far as entertainment goes, which is why I like watching the game, to be entertained, it was pretty fucking boring. Mao's just got absolutely rolled over. Didn't even feel like they really put up a fight other than Dust 2 at the start. Nuke was a little bit closer than the scoreline says because of all the clutches, but all the clutches just kept going in the way of Vitality. And they lift their second trophy for the year. So they won Katowice. Now they've won this one. They've lost one series this year, right? They lost to Eternal Fire during the bounty. And other than that,
first round, right, of the line.
It's only a handful of maps that they've lost. So this ROPS edition seems to be working with flying colors, and it feels like they're a decent amount ahead of the rest of the field. So do we have any strong thoughts about this final or Vitality, gentlemen, or even EPL as a whole?
Oh, it was such a snooze fest, man. Like that was the most boring final we've seen in a long time. It was kind of rough. I didn't even watch the first map. I was like a little bit late, and then I watched the second and the third. I'm like, I haven't missed it. I didn't even have to be here for this. Like it was just so, massive snooze fest. So I don't know. It just kind of goes to show how the depth of Vitality, especially the way that final goes. Like they all finished within like 42 to 45 kills across the whole event. I think Apex is not even their lowest rated player, like, and he's doing well. Everybody's like just delivering on all fronts, so it feels a bit like, old Astralis situation, where you can't really poke holes in that team. Obviously that will happen whenever somebody's dominant. It's just kind of like a byproduct almost as well, but still, like, it just feels like there's so much depth on this team now.
Yeah, I mean, it was more like the more surprising part about the final is that Spirit wasn't there, first of all. So you're like, okay, how did that happen? Then, okay, if Mouse win, then maybe they can put up a good fight against Vitality in the final, but that wasn't really the case. As you kind of pointed, maybe there are some chances on Dust 2, but then as things progressed, it was just looking worse and worse. And then exertion on that Inferno, that was just sad to watch, to be honest. Like, it's so many, a combination of like unlucky and out of connection with what's happening in the game, that just made it like, okay, let's just end this so we can all go home and like wrap up and break down the studio and move on to Lisbon. Like it felt like 7 or 8 rounds into that Inferno, it was just like, yeah, it's just such a GG that no one even wants to be here. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah, it was a shame, right? And obviously the discourse comes out then. It's like, oh, best of 5 grand final. Like, why are we doing this? We could have just had a best of 3. And I'm like, guys, you guys can't make up your fucking minds. It's like,
this is so close. It might like so short. It might have as well been best of 3. Like it was like 2.5 hours. I feel like for the whole series. Like I was thinking about it before. It's like. Best case scenario, this ends at like 9 p.m. There's no chances to like do anything after the grand final, but essentially could have done anything. Everything was open when everything was done. So yeah, that was a vibe.
It was quick.
I was trying to like get to the reason why they've been so dominant, because like, of course, Robs has some of these games every now and again, but he has a lot of those where he's just there because like they just dominate without him, and so he doesn't really get to a position where he needs to make a difference even. And so it's curious, because Flames also for the group stage didn't really have to do much. It was just kind of the ZywOo show, and they just dominated everybody anyway. Then Flamesy like takes over for a couple of games, and then Mongolz series, like first map of the final, he also kind of takes over when ZywOo disappears, and they're still dominant despite that. So it maybe is exactly that. It's not like everybody's delivering at all times, but they just always will have somebody who is taking over, that
they have enough depth. Yeah, exactly.
Like even by the end, you have Mazzy like in a couple of games, like when maybe the other guys are a little bit quieter. So it's like really it is difficult to find any holes or to get them in a place where they will have a day off, because of this, because now they just have. But not that much has changed. I mean, Spinks, it's not like 1-for-1 Spinks for Robs is such a big difference. But maybe it's partly due to the change of roles, because Robs is more of like the anchor specialist, right? Whereas like overqualified for the positions he's playing. And then that frees up everybody else to have maybe a few more games that, like for Mezzy and Flames especially, they will probably have a few more games where they do have extra impact when Robs is super solid on the side, where if Mezzy or Flamesy was there, maybe they wouldn't be able to hold that as solid. So maybe that's like the biggest reason, where you can't really see like a significant increase on anybody individually, but it all across the board, it just seems like it's clicking.
I think,
Yeah.
sorry.
You're right. You go.
I mean, the team play is just it's top notch. Like the way they play off each other, like some of the mid rounds, like 2-man pushes and stuff like this. Like, is it the honeymoon period? Is it like it's new? But I think it's like the combination, as you said, like the baseline is so good that they can build on top of this and like pull off some of these like little adjustments and stuff. I think also when you look at the Anubis, for example, which wasn't that good for a while, then they made some changes now and they're playing a bit more. I would say not even proactive, but let's say like gambly, almost like different setup on A, pushing in, doing like retaking mid when it needs to be. Like the timing of everything just feels good, and not even the timing. They just win duels. They push together. They trade off each other. It doesn't feel like it's the easiest word to say, but like disconnected. Like a lot of teams do stuff and
Sure.
feels very disconnected. They can't really play off each other. And in Vitality, I think that's like. It's looks really good right now.
Yeah, they also moved Apex to play connector or E-box if you had the Valve discussion going on away from middle. And I think Flamesy was picking up that position on the CT side as well. So there definitely been some changes on that map for them, which, because you look at it, out of all the maps they've played this year, Anubis was the weakness. It's the map they had lost the most. But overall, I think the sentiment appears to be, right, that everything is working for them right now, right? They have the individuals, but they also have the team that is able to deliver good, cohesive Counter-Strike as a unit. And then I also like the calling from Apex. Like there's a lot of variety in it, and it plays into what you were just saying there, Prof. It's hard for us to know if it's a gamble or a read. We can only look at what's happening on the screen. But more often than not, they're stacking the sites correctly, which is making things easier for them, right? Like if you've got 3 players, dealing with a mid to B on Dust 2, it's going to make it a whole lot easier for you to defend that site as opposed to being disconnected. So right now, they are, I would say, head and shoulders above everybody else in the scene, because other teams have a lot of deficiencies at the moment. It seems really hard to poke holes in Vitality's game. The holes will start to be, okay, do they start getting burnt out? Right? Do they, because they're going back to back, the target's on their back. It was on their back with them winning Canada, right? It's the biggest trophy of the year so far. But coming in here, now they do it in another environment. They also lift the trophy over the other arena champion this year as well, because we had Bounty, which was Studio for Spirit. We had Katowice, which was Arena for Vitality. We had Cluj, which was Arena for Mouse. I think if you're going to throw Honeymoon at any team, you could throw it at a lot of teams, because a lot of teams have had roster changes, right? And
but they don't have honeymoons.
They haven't really worked out.
Marital problems.
I think Mouse is in a honeymoon, right? They won Cluj with a weaker field. I think for them, they're in a honeymoon. I don't see them. I see this as their peak where they are now. I personally don't see the team evolving very much. I like the players in the team. I think they have a lot of good pieces. Like I really like Torji. I think he's great. I don't know. For Mouse, for some reason, I just don't see them being able to push those upper limits. But then you question where around Vitality is the threat's going to come from. Because you look at Spirit, okay, Chopper was sick, Magix was sick. Magix had a really bad game, then he tweeted some depressing stuff. So hopefully the kid's okay. You never like to see that type of shit.
I missed this.
It was on Telegram. I think he said something like, it's so sad that I was ever born, or some shit like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Like, and I know he's part of like the Russian
Bad
D_pressed kids. Like I get it. Like but at the same time, when you see that after a harsh loss, and if he's not feeling well, you don't like to see that, because mental health's a big thing. So that just is sad. So hopefully he is okay, and I hope hopefully it was just something he just said, and there isn't really anything to worry about in that regard. But you look at the team, right? Spirit is still number 2, but it feels like their deficiencies are easier for us to find than that of a team like Vitality. And then NAVI were meant to be 3rd, but it feels like they've dropped off significantly. And in a period of time when star players are such a driving force, I don't think there is a star player on NAVI. You had the playmaker of JL, but he appears to be having a tough time around things at the moment. So, this is where we kind of move into the rest conversation. Before we get there, I guess it's important to talk about the driving factor for Vitality. That you go into that studio event, which, we went from Malta, which only had a crowd of 200 people, but then you find yourself in a studio, felt just very flat in general. Because as well, they took out all the other booths, and then you just had this long, dark hallway. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? So in multiple facets, it was just a bit drab. But for them, knowing that they're in pursuit and hot pursuit because they have the Katowice win, they have the Cologne win from last year, now they have EPL, they have quite a few chances actually to be able to pick up the Grand Slam. Melbourne would be the next one they could get it done there. Would that be the first time the Grand Slam's been won in front of a crowd since Liquid? Because FaZe was EPL, Navi was EPL, right?
Navi was online.
Yeah.
EPL.
Yeah.
And FaZe was...
Yeah.
Which EPL?
FaZe was EPL, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
There was one in Malta.
I think you're sure. I think you're right.
Yeah. And then Liquid 2019
Or in
Cologne.
Cologne, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Liquid was the last one that was won in an arena. So it'd be nice if Vitality could win it in an arena. That would be a nice change. As opposed, imagine if they won it in the next season in Stockholm later in the year. That would be fucking hell. But yeah, so
I don't
Liquid,
even know if there's not more events, but maybe not actually. Probably.
well,
not.
you've got Dallas, you've got Melbourne, you've got Cologne. So they have those
so
three
that'll be the
opportunities.
fourth chance.
And then after that would be Chengdu.
So fifth even maybe, and we don't even know if they're going to go to Chengdu. It's also
Yeah, I
possible
mean,
they'll
at this
skip
point, it feels inevitable that they will win it, and I feel like have teams gotten to 3 and not won it? I don't think so.
That's a good question.
I don't think so.
I would have to check. I can check if the
Off the
previous
top of
seasons
my head,
quickly.
I'm not too sure.
Nope, not last
But
season.
just talking about
Nope.
other teams, I don't know which teams we want to talk about. I think we can.
But which ever really pop into mind?
I mean, when you're talking about like reads and like you don't know if it's a gamble or a read. I think this is like an interesting thing to think about. Just in terms of like all players and like what's the term, like, you know, judging stuff based on outcomes, because, you know, sometimes you make a stupid push but it works out, but it's a stupid push. But was it actually a stupid, you know, if you do this enough time, even if it's a stupid thing, but you do it regularly, then it is good. And finding that balance between like it's a read or a gamble is really hard. But I think you can see like the opposite of that in G2 right now. When you take out a player like Nico who had these reads, were they reads based on like something he saw, or was it a gamble? But more often than not, they would work. And now you have players that are trying to fill that gap on G2 are not doing a good enough job, or doing like their reads or gambles are not coming out as one rounds, which then leads to them essentially losing. And we can go back to that, the Mongolz situation against Navi, for example, from the group stage when he like called, they killed like whatever Wonderful on B, and they thought Jail was on B, so they all rotated B, but Jail was on A, and he 1v3'd them. And stuff like this is very interesting to find that separation and to be like, okay, this guy, his reads are making us this much better. And
that one you use there as an example is like Jail is the B player, right?
Yeah.
So they're using their name plating, and he wasn't B, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they use the information they have on where he should be, and he wasn't there. But it like, I think Rops referenced it as well in the interview, right? Saying like he likes what Apex is calling, and you know, a lot, and I think he used reads as one of the words when talking about Apex's in-game leading. So they have the full package right now. Like it seems difficult to find a team who could touch them unless it's Spirit on their best day, which I think Spirit on their best day can probably go toe to toe with Vitality as it stands now. I'd already mentioned Magic's had a really bad series in that Mouse game. Donk started really poorly, which was the same thing that happened to them at the Shanghai Major on Nuke. Like Mouse put on a masterclass on the T side, and all the flashes were perfect. Donk was just getting absolutely slammed. But it was different this time because they woke up in the second half and they brought that game back, and they even could have won that Nuke. So like Donk still is remarkable in the fact that this is just a kid who's able to turn his mental around after having, like, I think at the time
That was a lot of rage moments, by the way.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
like full tilt for the first half, and then somehow like he starts the second half with a couple of multi kills, and everything's fine, everything's okay. It's like he doesn't look shaken, you know. So it's interesting.
the new game at the Major was like his second lowest at the time, his second lowest performance ever. Still could have been his second lowest performance ever, right? And yeah, he just had a really tough go at Nuke, but then still turned it around. I guess the same conversations we're having about Spirit before they ended up winning the Major are still there. Like, is there enough depth around him? That conversation, I think, can persist going forward, because something that I want to get into, all of what we're talking about right now is going to be like intertwined with this mid-season check-in. So we're going to take a look at what are the odds that have been done so far this year. I'll bring that up shortly. But again, we've mentioned this a bunch of times. The most important element of all of this is where you're ranked in the VRS as of April 7th will determine your qualification for the major. So, Striker, I think there's a couple things that we need to get clear for the viewer, because this is one that I started postulating about the other night when I was talking with Jason and Yanko on Talking Counter, was once the teams are locked in for the major, they have the ability at that point to make roster changes, right?
I am not 100% sure how that, like where the actual submission is. I think at that point you just need to commit the core and then you can make changes after that point. But I'm not 100% on the details after that, like when the specific roster deadlines are. Because
that was my assumption, that it would be the core, right? The core would retain the spot based off of the invitation, because the ranking is still going to be fluid. It's still going to move up and down in the lead into the major. Just the implication on which teams are going to get invited will no longer change. It might have impacts on seeding, for example, but we have to wait and see how that's going to be handled come the major. But this is why this conversation can open up after Lisbon. That's essentially it for the top teams, right? There shouldn't be a whole lot of moving for the top teams based in Europe, and I guess Mongolz as well, and then North America maybe a little bit more to the lower end. But I think for the top end America's teams, it should all kind of be locked in. So as of April 7, we'll have that, and then they can start actual conversations with this nice timeline that we have ahead of us. We know the majors at the end. We know where the cutoff point is. If teams wanted to make a roster change after Lisbon or after April 7th, you're actually in a good position to do so, because you're still going to have a couple of months worth of events that you know what are coming up. You have a potential to revitalize your roster if you don't think you can piece the roster back together or get the strength out of the roster to contend with the front runner, which is now Vitality. Vitality's concerns are burnout. Vitality's concerns are how much more development is there for the team, and how much of the strat book, like, does it get old, right? Which is probably also part of the burnout, right? That's Vitality's issue. Whereas the other teams are like, if I'm Spirit, I sit back and I go, okay, do we have enough output to take on, if we go up against Vitality 10 times, do we have enough output to beat them 5 out of 5 times, right? Not can we dominate them, not can we destroy them every time, can we be competitive with them, right? That's the question, because they got absolutely smashed in Katowice. So then if I'm Spirit, I sit there and I go, okay, well, do we consider bringing in some fresh blood, which we know revitalizes the team, right? Or do we go, okay, well, we just won the last major with this roster. Like, we're going to give it another go. We're going to see if we can piece it back together. I reckon that's probably what Spirit will do. I think they'll probably stick with their roster to the major. I don't foresee them making a change.
I was just looking back through just to see what's actually exactly said on the major rulebook, and it says a team cannot adjust their core lineup, which is the 5 players, not 3, just for clarification, between the MRQ and the major. However, they can register a different coach or substitute player. So we've seen that before, where somebody just swapped out the sub between the qualifiers and the major, or like closer to the major, and then they used them at the major. He lost the stickers, but they could have used them, without any problems, So there's a world where they can change. I'm assuming not so much like after the invites go out. I don't think you can change much apart from that sub as well, because the MRQs are straight after that.
Those decisions have to be made before April 7th.
I mean, not really, because again, like if it's one change, you can make it through the sub rule. You can sub in somebody afterwards. So it's not going to be a problem. If it's multiple, then that might be a slight, like there might be a difference. But it could still be by the April 7th, like the cores get invited and you can still make changes to the other 2 players.
I would prefer
that. Once you submit that, then that's your core lineup for the rest of the major cycle, and then you can only change the sub or coach, which has been the rule for a long time. I would imagine that's how it works, but not 100% sure how the deadline is after the April 7th, because there's like a week between that and the MRQs, So I imagine on April 7th, there's going to be very quick, like that deadline is going to be very quick, I would say.
So I guess the whole point of bringing this up is, are there any teams that you guys think are in such a position where they're likely going to qualify for stage 2 at a minimum of the major, who could be looking at these type of changes or should be looking at these type of changes?
I mean, we never talk about them, but it's G2.
Yeah, we never talk about them.
I mean, for real, it just doesn't. It seems like so limited, this lineup. I really don't see this becoming much more than it is right now. But at the same time, it's kind of going in circles with the whole Monacy situation. Like, if he's not staying, then it doesn't make sense to build around him, and you need to build around someone else, right? So, but as it is right now, and with things that I mentioned before, I think they have really good players, but they're not doing anything better than the sum of their parts, right? And they need to do it for this lineup. And when I mean good players, I don't think like better than Vitality, because their level right now is just ridiculous, and their lowest player is like so good, so it doesn't really make sense, and we shouldn't compare everyone to them. But if we compare G2 to like the rest of the top 10, I think they have pretty good players. Like, Monacy is insane. He's in the top 3 category as he was last year. And then you have Mobs and Heavy God. I feel like really good players, but I think Heavy God is not doing as much as we need him to do on this lineup, especially against the better teams. I think he's struggling quite a bit there. So then it's left with Hunter and Snacks. Yeah, Snacks definitely not the greatest individual performer, and Hunter, who is like, I feel like needs to give something more to the lineup than what he's giving now for it to make sense. So it's like all of these pieces, except Monacy, could add 5 to 10% to their game, and they could be something. But as it is right now, I think they'd be the first I'd look for a roster change. Either it's like Hunter going to Snacks roles, Shui in, which I think works pretty well, to get Shui in like more active CT positions, have him call over Snacks, or just replace Hunter with a more skilled person. But I don't know who this would be, because you need someone that's both skilled and experienced for like CT rotation positions. Doesn't really come to mind someone straight away, to be honest.
Just quickly, Strike, you might have something to add here, but before we do, I just want to make sure that the people at home have the context that G2, they played Mouse in the quarterfinals. They won a map in that quarterfinal. They won Inferno 13-11. They lost Nuke 13-8, and they lost Ancient 13-11. But that game was a real messy game. It was very brawly. So for me, because I don't disagree with what you were saying there at all, Prof, but that's why I maybe don't have much stock in Mouse. Because like, if that's the type of game they're playing against G2, and G2 don't look like they have anything figured out, they just have Monacy, then what does that say about Mouse? So Strike, you got anything you want to add with G2?
No, not necessarily about G2. I mean, I agree with, like, when I was talking about this last episode, I think you can see on Monacy that he's just back in the, like, under a lot of pressure to be the guy who makes all the difference, and that's like, you could see that he was much more successful when and impactful when he had a bit more support, when he had more people to rely on, and he didn't go for so many of the crazy repeats plays, so that he's the one always making the difference, because it just can go both ways. And that's just something that we keep saying time after time. It's like they just win off of chaos at the best of times, and that's just not really a way that you can kind of rely on, right? And the depth also isn't there at the moment. I mean, I think, as Prof said, I agree with the Hunter part, and also Heavy God, like, yeah, we kind of expected him to maybe be one of those specialist anchors that are a bit overqualified and are going to provide better numbers than you would usually see from those guys. But that's not really happening. Like, he has the ceiling, but he doesn't really have the consistency. So it's just, you don't really have anybody to rely on other than Monacy, and even he's the guy who is going to be very up and down depending on like how his plays are working out, and that's also not something you can rely on. Like, if he's constantly the one going for openings and for big plays and all that stuff, like, it's just difficult to make that work. So I don't really have anything more to add.
Now, the short time frame for them, if Monacy is leaving, also becomes a bit of an issue. But we've spoken a lot about G2 in the past, so if people are interested in our perspective on that, I don't imagine they've changed too much. One that I do want to mention from a highlight perspective was obviously the Mongolz victory against NAVI. That's a really big win for the confidence of that team. It definitely was in a studio game, but still, I've been saying this nonstop. I think that Mongolz and EF play good Counter-Strike. Like, they play like high-end, top meta Counter-Strike at the moment. There's different flavors to it, but they have strong players across the board, and picking up wins against a team like NAVI for Mongolz is huge. So the only thing that I think Mongolz need, this is a young team. They have an average age of 20.5. The only thing Mongolz need is more reps on the stage to understand how to play in that environment, to get used to it, to not be nervous, to be able to take advantage of a scenario like that and be as comfortable against some of the names they play, because they play legit CS. Like, I love watching 9-10 on the AWP. I think he's fucking great. Like, I really like watching the Mongolz play. So for me, that was a highlight win for them. Going up against Vitality, who they lost to back in Katowice within the semifinals, that was always going to be tough. But they ended up taking a map in that series as well. They took Nuke off of Vitality there. They picked Anubis. They got absolutely dumpstered for it. They got absolutely destroyed on Inferno, but they still took a map off of Vitality within that semi. So overall, for the Mongolz, there's highlights there for me. Right? I think this is a team just making gradual steps, gradual improvement, and I'm really happy to have them playing top level Counter-Strike at the moment.
It was kind of crazy to see a team like Navi get completely fucking outskilled in a series. Like, it was just destruction on an individual level, you know? That was the weirdest part for me, where we were talking about how much depth Navi can have when they have people on, and then that can happen to them nowadays, you know?
You got anything to add, Prof?
Yeah, it was just insane. I kind of microing on some of these Mongolz situations where obviously they were the better team, but some of the rounds that they were winning, some of the individual fights where, like, you know, a guy is literally holding two angles at the same time. You know, he's going between one angle and another. He's like, I'm gonna find this timing. He's missing the timing. He gets peeked, still gets he's flicked around, gets the kill. It's like, nah, you just didn't do this. In like a 3v3 where this kill then, you know, opens or closes a lot of the map for the other players and makes them, you know, if this guy dies, then they have to play a different way. And they were constantly winning these duels, which, like, just made it felt so unfair. It felt unfair, like what they're doing. And I don't know if someone was speaking about Senzu, but like, he's a highly skilled player. And sometimes he would just be bad. He would choke a bit in some of these big games, and here he wasn't. So that was a great thing for him and them in general. As you said, development for the team, big scalp to take off of Navi and to destroy them, not just to beat them, but literally to destroy Navi on land. That was really impressive to see. And then on the Navi side, it's like, it's kind of the same that we saw in the group stage. It's not really that surprising, to be honest. Like, it is when you look at the score and everything, but if you saw how they were playing and how they played here and then the Mongolz level, it does add up. It's not like some crazy unreasonable result. It's like their individuals were not really up there. Mongolz were 10 out of 10, and they couldn't really get into these situations where they would usually outmaneuver, outplay, and even when they would still lose the duel. So it doesn't really help that you're like making this perfect timing play if you're still gonna get like 180'd and die. So that's just where they are right now.
Yeah, Navi are probably one of the teams that fall into the lowlights category. Don't know really what has to change there for them to start performing, because what's changed? Well, they won the major last year in Copenhagen. They had excuse me. They had a lull after that, and then they had a bit of a bounce back, and it felt like a resurgence. They end up taking home a lot of awards at HLTV's award show for the start of 2025, but the 2024 awards. And they come into this year as still considered one of the top 3 teams, but the type of Counter-Strike that they've been delivering and what the individuals have been outputting really doesn't back that up. So where their ranking is, like, it's kind of funny. The VRS had the top 4 teams as per the VRS as the 4 teams, like the final 4. Navi, we were saying, well, their VRS ranking doesn't really make for where we think they are in the world. And apparently we were wrong, because at the moment they are playing Counter-Strike that doesn't really justify a higher position. Maybe, 8, they made it to the quarterfinal, sure. But otherwise, not the best look for Navi. So I don't know. I don't know how they need to straighten themselves out. Essentially, you just need more output from your players. Like, that's like...
I mean, that game against Mongolz, it was literally wonderful, and that's it. Which is crazy. That's him, who is probably the most criticized player on this lineup, but he was doing the most, like, not only with the op, but there's a few deagle rounds, there's some rifle rounds. So yeah, it's not looking too great right now. And there's not the idea of burnout or whatever, because it did skip Cluj, so they wouldn't
there's no excuse.
burn out. So they're there now, and they're playing a LAN tournament. I mean, yeah, it's not looking too good.
Let's do this. Let's throw to an ad break now, Lucas, and we'll come back and we'll get into the mid-season check-in because a lot of these other teams are going to come up in conversation anyway. So let's go to that. We'll look at what are the odds that we've had so far, the ones that are outstanding, and we can kind of keep this going. So let's go to an ad break. We'll be right back, guys.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. Skin Place. Sell items now.
It was more than a game. It was everything. Every single emotion on display. Not a moment missed. This was CS:GO through the lens.
All right, thanks for sticking with us through the ad break. We are back. Striker's gone, maybe to the bathroom, maybe to drink. I'm not sure. Oh, there he is. He's back. He made it not in time, but we'll pretend that he was here. Okay, so what I want to do now is just quickly reflect over some of what are the odds that we've done so far this year. One of them is this from last year? The 22nd. Are these dated? These are dated. We had one here, PGL Cluj, to have more than 5 top 10 teams, and it's marked red, and the people at home voted yes. So I guess that means that the people at home were wrong.
Yes.
Okay. Mouse lose more than 1 player in the shuffle period. People at home voted yes, and they didn't in the shuffle period. They did after. So, you know.
They didn't lose him. It's still on their contract on the bench.
Got him on technicality there. Okay, so
what did you say about Cluj?
PGL Cluj to have more than 5 top 10 teams.
More than 5. Okay, got it. All right, because it had 5.
Yeah.
The next one we had was Falcons keep the new roster into Season 2 of 2025. The people at home have voted no. So that essentially means, guys, after the major, after the tournament break, will they have the same roster?
Or before, even.
Or before. How do we feel that one's aging, gentlemen?
I think pretty well. I think that's pretty... I mean, at least I think they will.
Still make a change?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that just based... I think
runners up? Depth just isn't there, you know? Like, they will not win events with this lineup. Let's just say that. And that's what they're going to be aiming for. That's always what Zoni's going to be aiming for. Eventually, you know, we know that Falcons made this change effectively, you know, again, to get the core, you know, to get all the invites to be able to progress, you know, in the year and actually have something to play and all that stuff. I don't imagine we're in such a different position than we were like this time last year with Falcons, you know, and we know how that went. You know, eventually that didn't really work out. They started making changes because they weren't really at the level they were expecting. So yeah, I don't think that's any different at the moment.
Okay. Well, do you think it's helped out by the fact that G2 aren't performing well either? Because Monacy's the one, right? Monacy's the one who I think everybody wants to, hopes goes over there and joins Nico.
Yeah.
So yeah, G2 not
but I'm sure that's
well.
their hope at least.
Yeah.
Who knows about people overall? I don't know. That's a pretty controversial topic for people whether Monacy should go to Falcons or not. But for Falcons, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, next one. NIP get enough VRS points for the MRQ. The people at home voted yes. Right now in the VRS, they are 154th. So I think that one is not going to age very well for NIP or the people at home. So there's that one.
It is like I was looking through it. They basically have nothing to play, man, in those next 3 weeks. So it's like they can play open quals for. Yeah, they can play open quals for Astana. They will get to the close qualifier. Those two are the only thing that they can do. And even if they win literally everything in qualify, I don't think there's a world where they can reach that level because it's no prize money, you know, no LAN wins. That is the biggest part that can prop you up. So I think that's pretty much decided.
I don't know which way we went with it. If we were positive or
we were
not.
negative, but like Striker was most negative, and then me and you were like a
little bit more optimistic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Train is played 5 or more times at Blast Bounty, which I said it wouldn't be. I think you guys said it would be.
Yeah.
The people at home said it would be, and you motherfuckers were wrong.
It was like 4, not 5, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It was 4 in the first round, and then
that was it
during the online stage.
Yeah, it was just people, underdogs. It was all underdogs. But Train got played a bunch more, right? We see Navi play it, we see Liquid play it, so it's starting to come into the map pool more. Teams are definitely getting more comfortable with it. The meta's starting to get a bit more defined, so that's nice. I like seeing more of it. It obviously just wasn't going to happen straight away. It was too early. It was just too quick. So Train is aging well.
Obviously, could have been picked one more time. Like one upset actually happens, he gets picked twice. Oh, obviously wasn't gonna happen.
Obviously, I did the math.
I always said.
Pain, EF, Bet Boom, or Heroic will reach Blast Bounty Grand Final. The people at home got that one correct, and they voted yes.
There we go. Congrats.
So EF ended up making it. Donk doesn't win the MVP of IEM Katowice. The people at home said yes, and they were correct. He didn't win the MVP of IEM Katowice. Zywu wins more MVPs than Donk this year. Well.
2-1 so it's now 2-1.
Yeah.
2-1. Okay, he took the lead. And people said yes on that?
People at home voted yes. That Zywu does win more MVPs than Donk this year. And with the way that EPO just looked, that does feel possible.
It's pretty possible, yeah.
But Donk's still putting on big performances, right? Like if they had made it to the final and it wasn't a blowout, you never know, right? Like because Donk's group stage, he absolutely farmed. It's just, it's hard to keep. This is the thing that is crazy. It's like if you're a higher seed team in the tournament, you are going to verse weaker teams unless there's a lot of upsets. Well, actually, if there is a lot of upsets, then you will verse even weaker teams. So that's just kind of the way it goes. Like that's what happens when you're a high seed. There's a reason that you verse low seeds. You've earned that. Like you're one of the teams that are expected to go deep within a tournament. You're not meant to be getting stuck up on a fucking Tyler or something along those lines. So yeah, but that one seems like that's going to age pretty well for people. I think, at least as far as things are concerned right now. What else we got here? Smoothie is signed by an organization. No, it doesn't matter. We don't need that one.
Who said this to you?
Said what?
Prof just tweeted something.
Oh,
it's per sources.
Okay.
Pretty good. Navi have to play the MRQ. Okay, so this one here kind of brings us into the next phase of the conversation, I suppose. Let me just go over the last two, and then we can start that. Cash is in the MM map pool before June 1st. The public sentiment on Cash is a lot stronger than I thought it was when we did that. So if I could change my opinion on that.
They voted yes or no?
The people at home voted yes.
Okay.
We went with no. Like I know we did with our odds, I'm pretty sure. But if I could change my opinion, the public sentiment is a lot stronger. What the fuck is this?
No, that's my little thing for
freaked me the fuck out. The public sentiment is so much stronger around Cash than I had thought. I don't think it'll be in the official map pool, but I think that it could end up in the community map pool, the matchmaking map pool. So I've changed my opinion on that. And lastly, Tyloo qualify for the major. So that's also going to go into this conversation we're going to have right now. So what we're going to get stuck into at the moment, guys, again, April 7, very important date. Striker just put an article out yesterday regarding exactly what we're going to talk about right now for the Blast TV Austin Major. So Striker, take it away. Lucas, make sure you share your screen.
I'm the captain now. All right. Yeah, I don't know if Lucas can show it. I just was starting.
Can you see my screen, guys? Can you see my
screen?
Well, we can see it.
Yeah, I know. I'm just waiting for Lucas so we can get stuck into it. But yeah, I mean the point is we have 3 weeks before the invites to the Blast TV Austin Major go out, and the qualifiers, which is on April 7th. That's the Monday after. I mean, basically the Monday of Bucharest starting, or like the second day of Bucharest, which is not going to be included anymore. So the only big event that we have on the calendar now before then is Blast Open. And then we have a bunch of smaller tournaments that are happening across all the regions that will still count into it. So I just put together like a little article yesterday, but also I wanted to do a bit more for Confirmed, just to tell people about what the race is looking like at the moment and what are some of like the biggest like the edge teams, that could either not make it to MRQ or the major itself, and just like put that across. But just as a little bit of a refresher, this is like what the slot distribution for the Austin Major is going to look like. So stage 3, which is all the way before playoffs, like the whatever before would
final
be
Swiss stage.
Yeah, right. The third Swiss stage, that's the top 6 team in Europe, and the top team in America is top team in Asia. Stage 2 is 4 teams in Europe and 4 teams from Americas, And then stage 1 is all the major regional qualifier teams, which is 6 from Europe, 6 from the 2 Americas ones, because it's been split online. So they've been split into South America and North America. And then 4 teams from the Asia Marques, which have been split into 3 different qualifiers, which is effectively Oceania, China, and Mongolia. Yes.
Yeah, and obviously adding on to this, like the actual stage 3 is these 8 teams and the 8 best teams from the previous one, and stage 2 is these 8 teams and the 8 best teams from the previous one, just like advancing kind of into like consecutive Swiss stages.
Yeah, this is following the increase to 32 teams, so that's like the extra stage, and then the entire system works the same way, just with one extra Swiss stage. So everything that we've known from the majors so far. So let's get into Europe. This is what it looks like as of today in our kind of like implementation of the model, but that's effectively accurate. I mean, that's just as of whatever events finished today or by today. I think the last actual Valve update was on March 3rd, and they haven't really done weekly ones anymore. They didn't release one yesterday. They didn't release one last week. So I guess we're just going to see more monthly. So this is even more important for us to have some sort of a live implementation. In Europe, as I said, top 6, and then the next 4 are going straight to the major. I think the interesting one there would be to look at kind of this group of FaZe to G2, who are like 50 points basically apart, which is like 5 spots apart, or just 50 points. All of these teams are in Blast Open, so that's kind of
for the audio only listeners. This is FaZe, Eternal Fire, Falcons, NAVI, and G2. Yes. Are the 5 teams.
So these 5 teams effectively, I mean, if you look at the gap that is to the top 3, I think the top 3 is pretty much safe to go to stage 3, whatever happens in Blast. That's Vitality, Spirit, Mouse. They are like 150 points ahead of the next best. So I don't think there's a world where 3 or 4 teams take over Mouse, for example, at Blast. I don't think that's probably not even mathematically possible, to be honest. So I think we can be pretty safe with that. But then those 5 teams are going to kind of fight for those last 3 spots in stage 3. Effectively, whoever finishes better is going to make it, I would imagine. I don't think, FaZe can finish below NAVI and then like they're not going to get kicked out, or below all these teams and then not going to get kicked out. So effectively, that's what's going to get decided. So still straight to the major, but depending on whether you start from the 2nd or 3rd Swiss stage. And then a little bit further down, yes?
Yeah, just quickly, I think it's important, right, because this is edging into the Lisbon conversation as well, but we're on this right now. Group A has Falcons, Astralis, FaZe, and VP all in the same group, right? And only 3 teams per group go to the playoffs of the Blast Lisbon format. And then when you take a look at Group B, that has G2, that has Eternal Fire, that has NAVI in it, right? So like that, just so people understand, only 3 names are going to make it through, and these teams are going to have to play against each other. So when they do face up against each other, these are going to be some very important games.
Yeah. I mean, especially for like maybe some teams, like I think NAVI is skipping Dallas, right? Is this true?
Yes. Yeah, they're going to Astana.
Yeah, and some teams that like want to have more time off and prepare and stuff like this would prefer to start with like stage 3, right? So for some of them, it means more than for others. But in general, it adds into like, who knows how the stickers will work, but usually the higher you are, the better the stickers are. But that could change if you have like FaZe and NAVI both ending up in stage 2 somehow, because these are usually orgs that bring in a lot of sticker sales. Yeah. So that's also for someone like Vitality and Spirit, they probably also want NAVI and FaZe to be there, so that it like raises the sticker money for them.
Yeah,
back over to you, Captain.
It could also be a lot of Brazilian teams, as we'll get into in the second one. So maybe it kind of evens out. Like Furia probably falls into that. So like a lot of these, that might actually kind of work out pretty okay. I don't know. We'll see. Not really important that much. But yeah, lower down is where we get into kind of like, do you make it to the major, or do you have to play the MRQ? Astralis are kind of a big name in that. Who are out of these next 3 teams, Astralis, 3D Max, and Gamer Legion, they're the only ones in Blast, so they look pretty safe. It would be unlikely for them for Virtus Pro and 3D Max to jump over them, even if they lose both games in
Gamer Legion in the Blast.
No, that's what I'm saying. That Astralis
Oh,
are
they
the only
said they
one that
were.
is
Okay, sorry.
is out of these three teams. The next
And
one
then
that is Virtus Pro. That's effectively
Yeah.
like Astralis' only direct competitor. And in fact, like funnily enough, there's a very good chance they'll meet in the elimination game for Blast, because Astralis is playing Vitality, Virtus Pro is playing Spirit. Who is that? I can't remember. Virtus Pro is playing FaZe, right? And they are on the same side of Group A, so they might well end up in the elimination series. And if that happens, Astralis go out last. Virtus Pro goes on a deep enough run to like bridge that gap of like 160 points. Maybe there's a world where Astralis also like lose enough points for 3D Max to also jump over. I guess there's a possibility. It looks to me fairly unlikely, but maybe there is a chance that they can lose that.
So essentially what you're saying is like Astralis' streak of not making majors is pretty much done.
It looks so. It's
Okay. Either done,
promising,
or the headline is insane, insane low percentage reality comes true, and Astralis miss another major. These are the two options that we have. I'm thinking the headline world.
I think it's not like absolutely miraculous, but it would take like a pretty good result from Virtus Pro at this tournament, like playoffs at least, I would say. And
but also require 3D Max to go over them.
Yeah, but
other results.
Like if they lose those two games, they might lose enough in the head-to-head to go below 3D Max potentially, especially when one of those is an upset. Like there's 25 points between them and 3D Max, which is it's possible to lose across a couple of games, even if one of them is against a high favorite. So maybe there's a world where they can lose enough points with two consecutive losses, you know.
But even if Astralis would go out of stage 2, they still have a chance through the MRQ. But MRQ is quite competitive considering how few spots there is. Yeah, I mean there's 16 teams and only 6 spots go to the major, right, to stage 1. So it is, and yeah, Astralis' history and RMR's has not been great. It's four majors in a row that they've now missed. So I'm sure that they are praying that they get like that one win in Blast or just beat Virtus Pro that head-to-head. That's effectively all that's going to do it. You know, they're going to be fine. Or even like they take the first upset against Vitality. That's going to put them in a place where they're going to be safe. Even there's a world like they do well enough, they can make it straight into stage 3. You know, that's 150 points gap. If they go top 2 again, you know, if they have a really good result, that could be possible. But
we have to also think about decay, though, don't we, Striker? Like of events.
Yeah, but Astralis have a very, very fresh, like the top 3 at PGL. So I would imagine a lot of that is actually going to stay very relevant. So of course there's going to be some decay, but those 3 weeks, I don't imagine are going to make that much of a difference. 3D Max also don't have like that big of a result, right? So of course they did like top 11 in EPL, which is fairly valuable, but it's not the same as the top 3 in Cluj, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not 100% sure how it would work out with some decay involved, but it's not that long of a run up anymore that I think that's not going to take too much of not going to be too much of a factor. But yeah, I mean, further, not that much to talk about other than, you know, looking at the cutoff of 26, what it looks like at the moment, though the teams that would make it to the MRQ at this point. We have to push that line a little bit lower just because there's teams like Wildcard that's not going to be considered. Likely not going to be considered, though we'll get into that later because there's a world they fall into this MRQ. And then Navi Junior is the next one. As you said, you can't have 2 teams competing at the same tournament at the major as one organization. So unless they would like split from the org before that or something like that, that would not be possible. So now the cutoff would be more below Ants. So Ants are just on that edge at the moment of the teams that would make it at this point. And there's actually kind of a lot of tournaments that will
have impact on that,
will have impact on all this, you know, and it's a lot of teams that are on that edge, you know, like if you look at this, there's like Paravision, Apogee, Boom, 9, Ends, Namiga, Passion UA, Clot, all these teams or many of these teams are in these PGL standard qualifiers or with Galaxy Battlestarter. This Boom Landalan close qualifier has like Paravision, I think. Same with Qatar. I would imagine that's going to be a bit weird. We still don't know who those invites are, but it's probably not going to be a lot of these teams because they will have to play the MRQs, which are at the same time as Qatar. Yeah. So it's a bit weird, but maybe they will say yes to the close qualifier just to have a chance to get some points anyway, even if they can't make it to the main event. It's a fucking mess. Let's just say that. And yeah, I put this check line in there as well because it actually might. That's the only LAN that will be played in this kind of like tier 2 scene, and it's effectively like teams like Eklot, Sinners that are going to be considered. And we know LAN points are really fucking impactful, so any team that might like whatever, if somebody like takes over, or like Eclot confirmed their position as the favorites, they might just shoot up into the MRQ easily. Or if somebody upsets them and like takes that first place, that might also shoot them up straight. Like Sinners are like 65, but we saw with like Blue Jays what they did with Philadelphia. They made a similar jump, so that's there's a world where that event might actually make a big impact because of how the VR works at the moment.
Okay.
At the moment. All right, Americas, that's a bit more simple. Liquid, I mean, not 100% confirmed. They would kind of take, I don't know what it would take for them to drop off from the first place. They have like a 60-point lead to Pain, who are not in Blast, and then a 200-point drop to Furia. So I don't know, Liquid would have to completely bomb. Furia would have to go like win the tournament or go top 2 or something like that, to be able to bridge that gap. I don't think there's a world where Liquid can lose 60 points in that tournament to drop to Pain, like drop off enough to drop below Pain. So I would imagine they're going to be pretty okay. And then the next 4 teams, Pain, Furia, and might be our wild card at the moment, would be the ones that would make it to the second stage. But there's
looks like it all shapes up. Like that makes sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a world where like these MAD are also in Blast, so that's one that if they have an upset run, they could definitely jump over wild card who's not in Blast. MIB is not in Blast, but that's a bit of a distance.
It's kind of crazy to see like complexity, like third in the US, like in terms of North American teams, wildcard MAD complexity. But like it is very realistic considering their results this year, but still just in the last 6 months ish. But it's weird to see them not even being like the first team after Liquid.
Yeah. So wildcard or MAD and Imperial are the 2 teams that we're going to see in Blast. So those ones are really, trying to have that upset run to be able to make that 100-point gap to wildcard or whatever, the 150 that they have to make up. Obviously, kind of a long shot. There's it's not going to be easy for them for this to change, but then it comes with like if wildcard does drop off, then they would be thrown into the European MRQ because of how the rules work out at the moment. Unless there's going to be some changes that we don't know about, and they just like switch completely to an American team. Just in case this happens. For example, they might actually like preemptively like change the lineup and get a third North American player, and just to make sure that they actually make it into this MRQ instead of the European one. So that would be fun. Just there's the world.
Just looking at MAD play against the Mongols in their first game, and then they're against the loser of Navi Furia, which I don't think is too bad.
Like a Furia win, yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, who knows, right? Don't want to do too much speculation, but yeah, they could do some damage there, get some land wins. Could be possible, but the idea that wildcard would then be thrown into EU, crazy. But not to go into details too much, but that is possible.
And then it's a bit difficult to split these teams. Like if you just look at the rankings, so I just put it I put the screenshot from the article I wrote about who it would be at the moment in those MRQs.
Is anyone missing?
There's South American one is the interesting one. There's like Red Canids, so Code Zero's team is out of this. 9Z is out of this. They're just below that. I think those 2 teams are the next 2.
But a team called Swingers.
The team called Swingers is above them at the moment.
Okay, so that's kind of that's not ideal, right?
No, but I don't know what the results have been. I didn't really look at like whether they've had like a big losing streak. I know Red Canids and 9Z haven't been doing that great, so that's probably the reason. But that's how VRS works. You just don't have any fresh wins, and you don't really do any go to any lands and all that stuff, and you just drop very, very quickly. But it is. I will go to the next one. There's a few events for both of these to still kind of shake things up a little bit, especially South America. They have like this, the Buenos Aires qualifiers plus the PGL Astana one. A lot of those teams like Red Canids, 9Z, as I was talking about before, and those. So there's definitely a world. The differences are not that big, I think, between those teams. So there's a world where that still kind of changes quite a bit.
They have a chance. Stop cropping the shit. Just leave the whole thing. Thank you.
Yeah, it might be a bit hard.
Okay, but then it's missing every time he goes back and forth.
Right, but it is just a bunch of online tournaments, which in those regions it's actually kind of important because they don't have that much going on. So that it really might shake up quite a lot in terms of the bottom teams and who makes it, who doesn't make it. So don't want to ring alarm bells for Red Canids or for 9Z just yet, but they are definitely under pressure to put on some good results in these.
Okay,
And then
cool. Something
we
to
get
look,
into
keep to
Asia.
look forward to.
Yeah, we get into Asia. That's again top team. There's no fucking way where Mongols can ever drop 360 points to
No one's
ever
even
be in any
close,
sort of
yeah.
danger. So they're definitely going to get that stage 3 invite from Asia. Liquid obviously are not going to count into this because they're going to get that stage 2. There's no way that they will drop out enough, or whatever.
Yep.
Like actually they would probably always be in the Americas one anyway. So anyway, like Liquid we can ignore, but everybody else is effectively going to be in the MRQs. Which is at the moment, we were talking about this earlier. It kind of depends.
Ignore ATOX. They're not going to play, are they?
Well, I asked, and it seemed like it's still dependent on where this investigation by ASIC goes exactly. There's
Really?
a temporary
Okay.
suspension, and it seems like there's some development there. So we don't.
Okay.
And, like Valve are not exactly in the position where they are ready to hand out bans based off of provisional suspension and all that stuff without any clear evidence or any clear action taken against ATOX, which hasn't been done officially yet publicly. So, or any evidence has not been put out there. So I'm not sure that it is up to Blast necessarily to ban this team, because they have done for Blast Open, but they haven't for this. So that kind of tells you where that decision comes from, probably.
Yeah.
The important part here is who actually ends up on top of these MRQ teams.
Wait, they're tied on points. Rare Adam and
Yes,
FlyQuest.
now they actually tied on points.
What
and it just,
the fuck?
It lines up with what we were talking about earlier, right? Like FlyQuest's points are decaying at a much higher rate because Rare Adam have just more wins recently.
Yeah.
So we are expecting Rare Adam to shift into the top spot, which would
2
cause
spots to
them
China,
to
baby.
have those 2 spots in China.
Yeah.
Especially now that ATOX, got all those invites removed. I don't know if they have anything else to play. Actually, if they're still in something else, I can check just very quickly to see if to see.
You have a look.
If,
I'll bring everybody.
No,
why
there's
this
nobody
is
there.
important. No.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
nobody. They have nothing. They have nothing to play. So effectively, it looks like China is going to
China,
get those 2
nice.
spots
They
because
deserve it.
yeah, they definitely deserve it more than Oceania would, where the
100%.
depth is just so bad. I mean, the next best
There
team
isn't any depth.
in Oceania is Mindfreak or Housebets, and it's like a team that both teams that just got screwed in when they played against international opposition.
Mindfreak is going to the major.
Right?
Write this down. Clip this.
This
So
is
it looks-
the thing, right? Like FlyQuest not getting any results, it makes it like so that like obviously China deserves it more, but if they had been able to get a couple of results at EPL, they may have been able to keep a buffer, so it wouldn't have been a problem. And then a second Oz team could have had the opportunity to go and try and qualify.
Yeah. And that also helps them down the line, right? Like if somebody else has an opportunity, then maybe that helps the talent, move up in the region over time, all that stuff like that.
Definitely.
It is important. But yeah, I mean, from our perspective, it's obviously better if it goes to one of these other 2 regions that just have more depth, more teams that we can expect to be somewhat competitive. I would say China probably is the one, just because we have the best Mongolian team already at the event. So, we have 2 of Rare Adam, Linvision, and Tyloo make it, let's say, which is, would be nice. Like those teams have been competitive, have been shown competitive, both Rare Adam and Tyloo, Linvision also in a couple of occasions. So that's nice. Nothing too crazy that's happening there apart from this DFrag Invitational tournament, which is kind of going to decide the Oceanic teams. It's actually on LAN, and it has teams like Temper is in there. There's the X-Talent team that has basically nothing, like no points on the ranking. Somebody else, like one of these.
I think Mindfreak is there. I mean,
Mindfreak,
all the
Housebets, I think, are there. Yeah, Rooster actually is the one that's kind of important that people might remember from events. That's just outside of that cutoff at the moment, and they're playing in this event. So that will, probably 2 teams that go like far in this tournament. It doesn't have any FlyQuest, so there's no FlyQuest to defend their position as the best team. So anybody who does well at this event might actually like swoop in to grab a close MRQ spot for Oceania. Otherwise, it's a lot of qualifiers that I don't expect to make that much of a difference.
Yeah, only one word that has Freeman.
Yeah, that's the Freeman that would be playing with the Chinese teams. It's kind of funny when you look through the rosters there. Like Semperfi has 2 Latvians. You take a look at but that's the thing. To be fair, Australian Counter-Strike always had a lot of Asian players, right? Like because a lot of people from different parts of Asia would come to Australia to study. So you'd have like guys from Brunei or guys from like all these different countries, and they'd compete on teams, and so that's not that unusual to see. But it's this I think is really good for. I think it's Maverick who runs this in Oz, and it's really important because I talk to a lot of the old guys. This is what it used to be. The local lands in Australia used to mean something because they were qualifiers essentially for the WCGs or the ESWCs and that type of stuff. And that's kind of gone out the window. So now that this is in play, it's hugely important. So it's exciting to see. Good
I think
stuff.
it's a bit sad that the way that the Asia region got split, basically invalidates an entire region, which is like Middle East plus like MENA is effectively out of this because they just don't have enough to play to even get up to certain positions on the VRS, you know, and they don't have their own like sub region. And imagine even if they did. Like, how does that even work for Mongolians to play against? Like, that's where they would have to play, you know, Mongolians against MENA teams or like fucking North Africa teams, you know, to play across and the whole of Asia, basically. And like, I don't know how that would work, if that would work out. It worked out in a way where like all the teams that are at the moment invited, they're not going to have any ping issues to play in these online ones. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of how this got solved, to be honest. And just as a side note,
it is a bit of a mess, isn't it? The online stuff definitely sucks. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Cool.
That's about the update on how the race is looking at the moment. Yeah, there's the article where you can kind of like click through the events that are played. Until then, it's still like somewhere in the top 10 news, so people can find it.
So the most exciting things overall are which of the teams that could potentially edge in for Europe to get the stage 3, right? Or will they end up in stage 2? That chunk of teams you spoke about, like FaZe, Falcons, etc. Then outside of that, it's going to be the smaller events dictating which teams are even going to get the opportunity at these different qualifiers to play in the MRQs. Yeah. And that's essentially the headlines of what's exciting about this.
Yeah, I mean, there's the 3D Max, Virtus Pro, Astralis, who is between like stage 3 and MRQ, where I think that's like probably the biggest. That and then like not even getting into MRQ, those are the biggest two things that you want to kind of be above the line. Between stage 3 and stage 2 is like it's nice, but it doesn't like change the whole future of the organization or whatever. You know?
Yeah, having to play online qualifiers when you can look at some of the names that are out there is going to be tough, right? You're talking about like James Parry Vision's there, or like Heroic are pretty good online. You've got everyone's favorite team 500. So you know you really want to be careful with the online qualifiers. You want to be avoiding that at all costs, really. Okay, cool. Let's keep moving along, shall we? So we just spoke about what comes next, which is Lisbon. This is Blast Open Lisbon. This is the second Blast event for the year. This one is essentially running 2 8-team groups. These
pretty much like old DSL style, like Katowice, Cologne, pretty much copy paste. No,
it's pretty much what Melbourne will be, or what Dallas will be, right?
Best of 3s, all the way through, and then last game is winner goes to semis, loser goes to quarterfinals, 16 playoffs. Pretty similar.
Yes. So the only real downside with this, and we already touched on it once throughout the show today, is the fact that the seeding was based off of when these invites were done, I believe, which was much, much earlier in the year. So that's why we end up with a stacked group of Group A that has Spirit, Mouse, and Vitality, and also FaZe in the same group, which are 4 out of the top 5 teams in the VRS as it stands right now. Fortunately for somebody like the Mongolz,
I mean, 3 out of the top 3, right?
Yeah, that's probably a better way to look at it. The top 3 teams. No, wait. No, Mongolz are number 3.
On VRS, isn't Mouse?
Is it Mouse?
It shows it is Mouse. On the,
okay.
Mouse to
Mongolz. Yeah. Okay, so there you go. 3 out of 3.
1 point. 1 point.
1 point.
Out of Mongolz.
Bloody hell. No third place match. No, that's the PGL thing. That'll probably come into play, I imagine, next year. I think we've spoken about this before. I think Blast are going to change, or should likely change the way that they do their participation fees and turn it into club money. And anyway,
that's one thing that I kind of wanted to mention as well. Because this tournament only has 400K, which I say only, like in last year would have been pretty great event, because everything had like 250 or whatever, like a lot of these smaller IEMs and stuff. But compared to a Katowice, compared to EPL, compared to Cluj, which all had 1 million plus, it's not going to have as big of an impact. So that will also play into the earlier conversation I was talking about, about maybe Virtus Pro would have to have a really good result, to squeeze into the top 10, and same thing with like Astralis and their ability to stay in the top 10.
Yeah, so just quickly for everybody, this event is taking place in 2 locations. So the group stage, which will have all the 16 teams, is at the Blast Studio in Copenhagen, which I mentioned at the start of the show. So that's going to be in that new studio that everyone would have seen at Bounty. It's got those massive screens. I'm going to be heading in there later today for rehearsal. And that's where will be qualifying the 6 playoff teams, and then as of I think it's Tuesday next week. Is it? Yes, Tuesday. We'll fly to Lisbon, and then the playoffs for Lisbon will be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The 2 quarterfinals, the 2 semifinals, and then the grand final being best of 5 on the Sunday. And that'll be an arena event. So, it's something to keep excited. And we've been to Lisbon before with blast events, and it always seems like it's a pretty good turnout, a great crowd. So that's the long and the short of it. In terms of any other details, we covered the prize money, we covered the dates, we covered the locations, we've spoken about the teams. I guess the part that we just mentioned with having Spirit, Mouse, and Vitality all in Group A, so basically, guys, if you win your opening 2 best of 3s, you're straight through to the playoffs. It's just going to be a seeding match after that. So as soon as you lose one game in this format, you will drop down to the lower bracket where only one team will come out of. So let's say that Spirit take on Mouse. Well, that's a rematch of what we just saw in a studio environment again. Mouse very well could take out Spirit twice in a row. Like that's possible. We've already seen it once. And then that means that, if
but Mouse are also playing the much harder team in the first round. Spirit kind of got the wounds.
Yes.
So
which
that makes it easier.
Mazinho's brother's team, Bartak. Little Mazinho.
Oh, I forgot he was there. Nice.
Yeah. And then on the other side of things, like you've got FaZe versus VP. Well, we haven't seen VP in a while, and we also haven't seen FaZe in a while. So it's like, okay, well, what have FaZe been working on within the downtime? Have they had time to practice? What's Elijah's travel schedule look like while trying to find himself a residency? And then the importance for Astralis that you touched on before, they're going to be coming in really amped up for this, knowing that they need a good performance. Whereas Vitality, for them, they obviously want to win. Like, you don't want to lose, but for them, this one isn't connected to the Grand Slam. So this win is like a standalone win for them.
If you're talking about like how teams kind of like Vitality have always been this team that like really puts a lot of focus on which tournaments are the most important for us in this season. Like where do we want to peak, or what do we want to prepare the most for, and like what's going to be the most important. You'd have to imagine this is not going to be one of those because of lower prize pool and all that stuff. It's not the most exciting in terms of that. It doesn't count in the Grand Slam. So nowadays I would imagine they take a little bit of, well, I guess they don't really have time off, to be honest. Like they're just going to go over 2 days after they just won the tournament, so that doesn't even, is not even a conversation really. But like energy levels, it's probably not going to be the greatest because they've just finished the other tournament.
Which is hard, right? Because this conversation, Prof, like realistically, as I mentioned, you want to win, but at the same time, you've just like had a whole tournament, and now you come into this. Are you able to keep that energy level? Do you even want to keep that energy level? But this is where I think it's important for us when we're having these conversations to highlight to the viewer that maybe you're not going to get the teams that you'd expect at 100%. At 100%. Like, yeah, it's not, easy.
It's still worth pointing out that they have like almost a month off afterwards before Melbourne, or like 3 weeks. So even I would imagine that they probably will be in a position where, okay, like we're gonna get a decent break after this, and then we'll have Melbourne to try to finish that Grand Slam race, where we can get a week off and then we can get a boot camp, to make sure that we can do that, So I feel like this is still going to be one that Vitality are probably not going to like let out or whatever you want to call it. I think they're still going to be at a pretty high level.
So I was just thinking more from the other perspective of like the wins here, as we just discussed with the MRQ, the VRS means more to some of these other teams.
Yeah, of course.
So like if they're having a bad game and they're just like, oh, fuck it, like I'm not saying they're going to throw or anything along those lines, but there's a lot more on the line for other names here than there is for Vitality as far as the major run is concerned. So those factors have to be considered.
I think for them, it's like the difficult part will probably be the group stage, because when you get to the playoffs, I think the playoffs carry you through anyway. It's an arena and everything.
Yeah.
So it's more about like kind of resetting from winning a tournament and then 2 days later being like, okay, we start again. Like we are at the same level as every other team in these 16 teams today, even though 2 days ago we were the best, and like everyone's telling us we were the best and no one can touch us and stuff like this. So I think it's a lot about between the coach and like the performance team on Vitality right now to set them up properly in order to go on and win this, and then build truly that not that I don't want to say era. That's not what I wanted to say.
It's a dirty word.
No, I didn't want to say the E word. I didn't want to say the E word. I wanted to say that the aura around the team of being
2 letters,
not invincible, essentially. That's what they want to build by winning here, and in itself the prize pool, the points, and all of these things don't really matter that much. But what matters is to be like, fuck, these guys are untouchable right now, and to carry that and then go on, win the fucking Grand Slam and major and everything, and that's it.
So does it feel like with this conversation we're having right now, this is really problematic because you want to say the favorites for the tournament are Vitality, but with what we've just said,
yeah, for sure,
are they the favorites for the tournament?
I think it's still one of those where like
know?
when you go
who is if they're not? That's the problem.
But it's because of factors that are impossible to measure. If we were playing the major tomorrow, then Vitality are my favorite. But we're playing an event where it's hard to measure exactly what it means. Like it means something different for everybody.
But I do think that they're still on such a high of like they've been destroying everybody, and like that just fills you with so much confidence that I feel like you can carry that over. Like we've seen that with teams, you know, even if it's a short-lived success, we've seen that with teams like Liquid. You know, they just go from event to event and they just destroy everybody without having any time in between to do anything extra. You know, just because they are so much better than everybody else already. You know, so that baseline is just so strong that you like nobody else can do anything about it just because everybody else is at a weak point. I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. All these teams that have changed are not as good as they were before, probably, and nobody's there as a clear competitor to Vitality at the moment. You know, so they're probably so far ahead of the competition that we can't really see it as anything else, despite the fact that they like the energy levels might not be at completely 100%.
Okay.
I think, the thing is, like, you can't really pick out anyone else when you look at, maybe it could be Spirit, but like Spirit was also in EPL till today, so doesn't really change from that point of view. They're in the same group, which is the more stacked one, so it doesn't really change anything. Like, ultimately, I don't really see anyone else that you could pick as being like the big favorites. I think the more interesting thing would be like, okay, from the middle teams, is there someone that we can see overperforming or, you know, putting in a deep run that's maybe, you know, 8th in the world or something like that?
How do we feel about FaZe? Like, we haven't seen them play, so it's,
I mean, you would have to imagine it's going to be a lot of changes, right?
To the way that they're approaching
Probably
the game. Yeah. Well,
is it the roles? Is it the positions that everyone's asking for? Could be.
But what if they haven't changed any of it? What if they're like, well, we just needed more time? Like, that could be the case too. Because like the reason they took this event off, the reason they took EPL off was just so Alish could get situated, right? It didn't really have anything to do with, hey, we think at this point we need more practice. Even though it kind of works out nicely. So like, we're assuming there'll be changes because we think they should make changes, but obviously they think differently to us.
Yeah. It was interesting because they almost looked like they were playing the long game, right? From how Kerrigan was talking about, like they knew that this wouldn't be the honeymoon period, right, from the beginning, because of how kind of drastic and what direction, like how drastic the direction that they went into was. So it's maybe right. Maybe they're just going to stick it out and see until the major. Like if this isn't working, then after that they will probably make adjustments. It's also possible, yeah.
So I really just hate doing predictions because it's based on, like, you got to get a little bit lucky, and people just want to hear you say that their team's going to lose or their team's going to win, and then they like to clip it and get mad about things. So like, I don't think there's any real point of us going, okay, well, who are these teams who are going to make it from each of these groups? But I think that Group B is one where that conversation feels like it could be a little bit more valid, right? In the sense that you've got Mongolz there, and I expect them to take care of business. You've got EF there. I would hope that they can continue the strong form that they've had so far in this year. But outside of that, who would your third team be? It might not go that way. EF and Mongolz could definitely lose some matches, but let's just say
they're playing Liquid in the first game, then like Mongolz, NAVI, like that's a lot of games that I'm not sure if I'm ready to say who's going to win out of those. I mean, it's not easy.
EF already lost to Liquid 2-0, right? It was close, but 2-0 and EPL, so not really, you know, a lock-in. But even if they win that G2 next, I think I think the Mongol side, again, as you said,
imagine beating NAVI twice.
That would be kind of crazy, you know?
Yeah, like
I think it's a lot is open there, and it's going to say a lot of things about the teams that don't make it through. Let's say it is like a NAVI or a G2 not making it to playoffs. I think it says a lot. It's a very like a rough sign going into, like, obviously they're in the major. Maybe they're not in the part of the major they want to be in, but the fact that they can't get past all of these teams, I would say warning signs on for either of these, either G2 or NAVI. And I don't think both will make it through.
Yeah, that would be wild if both G2 and NAVI made it through. I think. I think that this group, even though it doesn't have Spirit, it doesn't have Vitality, it doesn't have Mouse, it's still like a pretty scary group when you consider how close a lot of these teams are to one another.
Between a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah.
But then,
I mean,
then when
G2
you think about
G2
it, they have
Liquid,
almost free games. G2 Imperial, NAVI Furia. I feel like these are still lock-in wins. But then the next ones being Eternal Fire or Liquid, and here probably Mongolz. That at least that win shows something, you know.
Yeah, they're tough.
I mean, G2 are still not don't have a top 10 win, right? This year so far. So that's two top 10, close to top 10 at least teams that they're going to face off against if they play between Eternal Fire and Liquid. So it would actually be kind of a breakthrough if they did make it to the playoffs. I would imagine they'd be pretty fucking happy about that.
Pretty condemning overall, really, isn't it? Yeah. Just looking at how
I mean, they haven't played that many of them, you know, to be fair to them, you know, so it's not like it's...
But they have Monacy. Monacy.
Oh, yeah. I was just scrolling through to have a look. So the matches start at 12 tomorrow. So it's 12, 2:30, 5, and then 7:30. But pretty sure Blast run an accelerated schedule. I'm not sure how it's going to work in the new studio.
Yeah.
They only have one setup in the studio, right? So there's going to have to be some time between. They don't have, at least what I saw. I'm not certain. I haven't been in there, but they only had one setup when Bounty was on, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
honestly, that's
also different.
Same ones.
They must have two setups. This would be insanity to run on one setup.
Normally, it's like 45 minutes between games if you only have one setup. That's what we're doing at EPL.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at which
we had the
games I'm
producer in chat.
What?
Mikkel was in chat earlier.
Oh yeah.
Tell us.
Oh, if I could miss that. Okay. Well, should we kind of start wrapping up? Get into our last couple of bits and bobs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a tie-in to EPL. So people may have seen on Reddit that there was a post. I think it was Maui who made it, but essentially it was from the stats on the map page regarding I think it was 6 out of the 7 maps being T-sided. And obviously it's quite close in terms of these percentages, but there's a big conversation at the moment about maps being T-sided. Everyone but Ancient was. I think Anubis and Dust 2 were the heaviest as far as T-sides were concerned. Then it was Inferno. I think then we had Train and then Nuke and Mirage were both pretty close. And there's a big conversation at the moment also around Anubis. We'll get to that one in the next one, which is the Fix Your Sit. But what are the odds for this week is what are the odds that Blast has 5 maps that are T-sided? So we're kind of building on this. Because if you look at Katowice, I don't think it was this same way. I don't think it was as T-sided as EPL was.
I was looking at the whole year, but basically, like if you go into big events for 2025, it's effectively that those 6 maps are equal. Like it's within whatever 2% of each other or something. Like they might be slightly T-sided, slightly CT-sided, but it's effectively means 6 halves. You know, like it's about as even as you can possibly expect it, and it's only Anubis that is realistically like actually T-sided. You know.
So I think that Anubis and Inferno are 2 maps which I would say are T-sided, obviously by differing degrees. I think Inferno is T-sided based off of, I think that the Ts can, most of the time with good utility combinations, win out Banana, which is always going to apply a lot of pressure to the CTs. I feel like because of the change to the Incendiary, as long as you're full ball on the T side and you're using the correct utility combination for whatever the CTs are rolling with, I feel like those 2 maps in my mind tend to hedge that way, whether it's 7-5 or we're talking like a 9-3. I think Anubis is obviously 8-4 type area. I think Inferno 7-5 is probably where I would be in my mind. So 5 maps are T-sided at Blast. Obviously, Dust 2 was very T-sided from EPL. So,
but it's like, I don't know. It's like when I was looking at that post, I'm like, it's one event sample size. Like it's always going to shift back and forth. Like there's going to be one game that goes like 10-2, and it's just going to shift the percentages just because we've seen like whatever 5 to 10 maps played on that, so it's like it's already a big shift. Like if even 1 or 2 results goes a different way, so it's like once we get into sample sizes, it's not really that significant. And again, across the entire year, it's nothing crazy. It's not like we have to ring alarm bells that everything is fucked just because one event is slightly more T-sided than,
that's kind of the
we've
point
seen
of this,
so far, right? Yeah.
So let's say that it is the same as what we just had at EPL, right? That's a whole different conversation within itself. Right now, we're trying to decide whether we think it's going to be or not. And I think it might be a bit more of a correction to the norm. So, yeah, I don't think it'll be 5 maps at Blast that are T-sided, but again, we could be wrong, and then we might need to start shifting that conversation and talking about a few more of the details which are playing into that. So I'll throw a percentage out early. I'm just going to go with something pretty moderate. I'll go with 25%. 25% of the maps.
Why are you thinking so?
Oh, wait, no, I've gone the wrong way. Wait, maps
5 maps are T-sided. Yeah, this is...
No, that's right.
25,
right?
25.
25 is good. Yeah.
But you were looking at big event stats. I'm looking at like overall stats for this year, and 4 out of 5 are T-sided. Some more, some less.
75, 25%, Luke. It's not 75. Sorry, mate. Anyway, keep going, Prof.
So 4 out of 7 are T-sided over 2025. Just overall stats we have for this year. A few are kind of close. And then there's the 2 that are not, and that could be our Train and Mirage.
Okay.
Nuke is the most city-sided and probably will stay like that.
Makes sense.
Then you have Ancient could be slightly T-sided, and Dust 2 and Inferno and just Anubis, as we said, on the T side. So the question is, can we make like Train and or Mirage to be more on the T side? I think it's pretty possible. I'd give it like a 51%.
Damn, okay.
There we go.
No,
It is surprising for me to see Train T-sided from EPL. Like, yeah, the conventional norm tells you it should be a CT-sided map, but it's also early on within the development of the meta.
yeah. I mean, at the beginning, it was pretty heavily CT-sided.
Yeah.
And it looked. I mean, it made a lot of sense just because the options were so limited for T-side, right? In terms of like how fast they can run things and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's again fairly even at that point, and it's the lowest played map. It's like 9 maps, So like 1 or 2 go. Like 1 or 2 Vitality plays T-side first, or like some dominant team plays T-side first, just destroys the game, and that skews the percentages, right? So I was going about it mathematically. Anubis is definitely going to end up T-sided, which let's say gives that 100%, and then the rest is 50-50. So that's 6 times 0.5. 1 plus 6 times 0.5 is 4. Divided by 7 maps is 43%.
43%.
Yes.
Look at this. He's done a full-on fucking equation here, Prof. Okay, well, he's higher than I am. I'm the lowest here. I just expect from event to event, it's just swings and roundabouts. Like it's matchup dependent. Like with underdogs, if underdogs try and pick into certain maps, let's say that underdogs try and pick Train into teams that are much better than them and just get fucking destroyed, like 10-2, 9-3 halves, and you're studying CT side Train as Vitality versus someone, you're just like, yeah, okay. Like you just got fucking owned. So this one's pretty close. You guys at home will be able to have your vote. That's going to be over on Twitter and on Instagram. And also we had the percentages coming from the chat right there. I think it was 59% or something along those lines. So, all right. You guys can see how that one keeps tracking. Okay.
I just realized you said 5 maps, but whatever. It fucks with my equation, but that's fine.
Hey. All right. Let's see how this one unfolds. We're going to get into the final one, which has also been a big topic about maps. So this is Fix Your Sit. With the new sponsor of the show, Anthros. You guys need a chair. Go and check them out. But this week I wanted to talk about Anubis because it gets a lot of negative press from a lot of the players. Players like, this map is shit. They don't like playing it. They talk about how T-sided it is. And I wanted to talk about this maybe a bit more big picture and holistically. Like, do people in chat, do we as people who are mainly viewing it, do we have an issue with the map and the way it is at the moment?
I think you should give your pitch first. So this is the idea.
Oh, okay.
Give your pitch.
So look, I pug a bit, and when I play on it, yeah, you know, if you're on the CT side, you're happy to get 3 or 4 rounds, maybe 5 would be pretty damn good. So it definitely leans in the way of being a T-sided map for sure. And I think about some of the problems with the map is if you're playing it on a high level meta like the pros are doing, it's very easy to bait out CT utility because they feel like they're constantly under siege, right? Mid you can take with double mollies on the T side, and then you see teams like Eternal Fire who don't even bother playing middle. You're able to take A main control with decent utility combinations. The fight over towards connector / E-box, you have good Molotovs there for the Ts to be able to flush them out, and you can only delay with you.
There you go.
What do you have to say about that one, bro?
Fix your internet. That's the best timing for this.
You add in the combination of things like, hello?
You You
Keep
cut
going.
out for like 30 seconds, so we don't know what you said after it's a certain point, but it's all good.
The long and the short is right now there's so much stress put on the CTs and they're forced into a position where they consistently have to go for aggressive maneuvers, right? That is essentially the map. You have to make plays all of the time. So my thought on this is some changes are necessary to Anubis to balance the map a little bit more, because the incendiary change, that's something that I think could actually help on all maps. But at the moment for Anubis, I think that you still need fundamentally some changes to the map itself to help out the CT side. Unless we want to have maps that are quite heavily T-sided. And that's okay too. But at the moment when most of the maps are swaying T-sided, it feels a little bit more problematic.
First, I think it's effectively all to do with kind of how open the... Fuck, I always get this wrong. A and B, because it's like I'm thinking Ancient and Anubis, and it's the opposite way.
A's the one with the fountain. B's the one with the big fucking dildo in the middle.
Oh, there you go. So B. It's just too open. It's not enough. There's not enough positions for CTs to take to be able to be comfortable at any point of the game effectively. Like, you always have to take a risk. Like, if you're playing around the pillar, like in front of Econ, whatever now we call it, like then you're always exposed from one angle, right? And then one piece of utility will screw you out of that position. If you're like in that little cubby that's out of the end, out of the B main, right? Then you're completely exposed to everything, and you can't really do anything. You effectively have to play. If you want to play it safe, either you're going to be in the in just behind the pillar, behind the dildo or whatever, or you're going to be in con in E-box, but then you can get mollied out. Like that control is pretty easily taken, right? So then you're just pushed back and forth. So it's effectively like if you change up that bomb site where you give CTs a few more positions where they don't have to be worried that they will either get mollied out on any basic execute that goes onto the map, or they will not be exposed to all angles, to like 2 out of the 3 angles that they have to cover. I think that's going to make it a lot easier for CTs to not feel so pressured to have to be on retake situations all the time on the sites.
Think about this, though. Think about the positions for both of the bomb sites where the Ts are able to execute from. You feel very safe in those positions. Like outside of A, once you know they haven't gone aggressive and you've smoked off connector,
as a T, as
a T, you feel pretty safe to set up and execute, right?
Yeah,
you get into baskets control, you have water control, you're able to throw all the utility outside of B as well, right? Like once you've made sure they haven't gone aggressive, maybe you've cleared out over towards jail and they're not there, then you're able to execute pretty easily. Like lurk smokes are really effective as well on that B bomb site. And then the bigger problem with this is, like I mentioned at the start, is the Ts can take. You have teams like Eternal Fire, like arguably the best team in the world for the longest time this year so far on Anubis. They wouldn't even bother playing middle. They just play site centric. So like I think there's a few issues which are fundamentally a problem with the map. I think like middle, there needs to be it needs to be more open. So if the CTs lose it, there's a way that they can take it back, because you're coming out of temple, you're coming out of camera. They're both small little holes. Like, and you can't stand in the middle of mid, because you're just in the open. You can't go anywhere. So there needs to be some structural changes there. Do you close up the door section so now the Ts can only come through that one point, which makes the choke point smaller for the CTs to guard? Do you open it up completely, remove the doors so that there's the CTs don't like have to, they can play more freely? You're not retaking middle just through a door choke point. And then this goes even deeper, because I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat who are like, oh yeah, but it's because of Pika's advantage, or it's because of the incendiary, it's because of this, it's because of that. Because of a lot of things, guys. Like the reason the game is in the state it is right now is a lot of factors. It's not just one factor. It's a lot of things. Like the CTs, when you talk about the economy, they're always going to be at a disadvantage. That's just Counter-Strike. That's the way it's been. Things have been more expensive. I've made my point clear about the diffuse kit. That's for retakes though. That's not for holding areas. You've got the incendiary, which was nerfed. Sure, it went down in price, but the spread and the duration of it is less. So if you're playing a molly defense, right? Molly car and banana, you molly back as a CT, their molly is going to last longer, right? And even if you want to hold on to it, then they disrespect it. Now they're ahead of it. Think about fucking during EPL, Maus called a literal ramp rush through Zontix's ramp molly because it just dog shit. If you're rushing B on Ancient and you're going up B ramp and the CT molly drops, if you're one of the first 2 spawns, you don't give a single fuck. You're going to take like one lick and you're in. You're happy to fight. Then you got people who are talking about, oh yeah, but there's the Pika's advantage. Okay, maybe the netcode is not as the same as it was in CSGO, right? I'm not going to get into the nitty and gritty about that. But then we can talk about other factors like Counter-Strike players in 2025 are much better at things like peeking into angles and having perfect crosshair placement, because that's something that's trained and drilled a lot more than it was, let's say, 7 or 8 years ago. So that evolution over time also plays in terms of that. The average Counter-Strike player at the moment as well on the highest end is better individually. Everybody's a fucking fragger. So we've got an Incendiary which sucks. We've got players who are better. We've got Netco, which probably has some issues. There's lots of factors that you have less rounds to be able to work back into a game. So if you lose pistol, force buy, lose that, you're not buying until the 4th round on the CT side with the full rifles. And it's not even full rifles. You're lacking AWP. You probably are lacking utility. There's so many factors that play into all of this.
Even despite that, we have 6 out of the 7 maps effectively 50-50. You know, even despite all of these changes, you know, despite what you were saying about CTs being at a disadvantage from 3 different points of perspective, and they're still able to put up 50% of the rounds on average, you know, across a year. Is it really a problem? I mean, okay, Anubis, you can say that, like, if you really want every map to be more or less equal, then yes, of course. But do we want that? Then do we need one more CT-sided map so we can get into more of a 1.6 situation, you know, where we had like, or even go in with Overpass? It was pretty heavily CT-sided, right? So do we just need Overpass in then, like, and then we have one really heavy CT-sided map, one heavy CT-sided, assuming it stays that way. I mean, that's not a guarantee.
But that's a conversation as well, right? Like, people thinking, anybody who has the mindset that every map should be 50-50, that's nonsensical to me. Like, why? I don't think you want that.
I agree, man.
You would prefer to have a bias one way or another, whether that's 2 rounds or whether that's 4 rounds difference, right? That's a different conversation within itself. But throughout the history of Counter-Strike, inherently maps have been CT-sided, right? Which then puts the onus on the Ts to be creative with the way that they approach the game. But the game's developing, the game's changing. We're seeing a lot more things out there. But the reason that Anubis is the focus of this one is because of all the top level pros talking about how they don't like the map, right? And how it forces them into this certain play style. There has to be structural changes to the map for that to change. So like you were talking about B and if they had some more places on the site, but it's outside of that. Like the Ts, it's very hard to agitate the Ts outside of B main, right? You can do an all-in aggressive play. You smoke T stairs, you push through a connector, you do a mid smoke, you drop out the window, you're aggressive A main, but you're coming through tight choke points. And even if the Ts say, that's fine, have it, you can only be out there for a short period of time. The T stair smoke will fade, then they can start working on retaking those positions. So the CTs are at a disadvantage inherently on Anubis. There needs to be some structural changes to the map, whether it's, like I said, mid is more holdable, which means that you're actually able to hold that key piece of real estate for longer as opposed to just giving it up. Or the bomb sites need to be in a position where maybe walls are getting moved so that like B is a bigger bomb site altogether and the Ts can't have that whole staging area outside, or you remove some of the windows, but then you only have a door. Okay, well, how are we executing? So there's a lot of problems with it at the highest end. And the fact that the pros are really having a bad time on it, you feel like it's going to start going the way. And it can't become the new Vertigo, because Vertigo is just everyone getting spammed through smokes. But it's just a shame that the map is not being liked, I guess.
I kind of like, to be honest, like I don't mind watching Anubis. I guess players don't really like playing it, but from a viewer's perspective, I don't really see a problem with CTs having that struggle. But then, you know, the best teams will find a way to actually get around that, right? And then you will see some new approaches or like some creative like double plays, you know, that we've seen, you know, either out of B main or the other side or out of middle sometimes, you know, like some aggression out of cave, like those like getting those timings right and all that stuff is actually kind of exciting to me when somebody does work out like the exact timings, you know, to go for certain pushes. Like of course it's going to put them in a more of a risk, but that's kind of what you want if you want to have a good map, right? Like you don't want it to be easy to play it on both sides, because then it's just all going to be it's not going to be as exciting to play to me, to watch to me. So I don't really think there's a problem, to be honest.
Yeah. I think like from a viewer perspective, it's the main issue you'd find from like T-sided maps is like too much saving, which happens to some degree on Anubis, but I don't feel like it's as bad as it is like on Inferno, for example. And I think it's still like kind of a rotation issue, because rotation speed is going to allow you to like retake or not. But I feel like it's more often than on Anubis that people actually try to go for retakes, or there are some fights
for sure.
You know, there are some fights and stuff like that. And also kind of the map is, as much as it has like some long corridors, it works okay with MP9. So people buy a lot of MP9s, and there's not that many like shit rounds that are like this is just a waste of time, which I feel like on Inferno happens more often even now than it happens on Anubis. So like I'm kind of more in the boat of like it's fine than there is an issue, because but I do understand playing it must feel shit on this level where, you know, fuck it, matchmaking or whatever, it doesn't really matter. People save or don't save, do what, you know, it's a completely different thing. But pros that need to think about the economy all the time and need to be like, okay, this round is unwinnable for us. It can be sometimes rough, but I think, as I said, I think on Anubis more often than not there is actually fights, but it's just that the T's win the fights. You know, people are in position on B side. There's like 3 people there, but the execute comes in and they lose anyway. And I think that's what feels like. It feels like we are in a good position, but we can't really do anything because there's 2 smokes and a molly, and anyone can throw them at any time, pretty much. And we know they're coming, and we still lose. And that's kind of what I see as the only thing about Anubis, that, you know, like it doesn't feel fair. But then you play both sides, right? So it doesn't really matter in that way. So
Tommy Lopez classic there.
I would like some changes, like either mid or B, like some adjustments just to make it a bit more balanced. But I don't think the map overall is like in an unplayable state, or even that it's the worst right now.
I think if mid was made more viable for the CTs to be able to either exchange utility and hang around, it's the perfect position to keep the map open, because if you can go for mid-round re-aggressors through middle on the CT side, you're able to flank very quickly. Flanking B main, dropping down the window, flanking. So I think mid's the one where you need to be incentivized somehow on the CT side to want to try and hold on to that position so it can be late activations, because right now your aggression is coming through like connector peaks, which tend to get smoked off. B main, like flash pushes on timings, or like A, you go for these like gimmicky moves where you double nade T stairs with the 3rd guy and 2 guys push out A main and look for fights up towards rugs or over towards T stairs and stuff. So yeah, I think mid would solve most of the problems. And, you know, like I said, I don't mind maps being T-sided. I just don't want to have all the maps T-sided. I'd like to have some that are, some that aren't. And also the teams and the way they approach maps dictates it. Like if you guys remember back to 1.6, there was a period of time, Train used to be one of the most CT-sided maps in the pool. And then VP like worked out this like smoke that they would throw coming out T main, and they were able to get out yard and fuck everybody back in 1.6. And then they made it like a T-sided map for a short period of time. So, you know, there's other factors that also play into this.
There's still evolution to the map as well. It's not like the map has been solved. I feel like over every month or 2, we see something different happening. So it's not, I don't think it's in some position where it's like the biggest problem ever, but I would like to see some adjustments just to keep it fresh.
Okay, so that'll be the end of the Fix Your Sit segment, the Anubis problem. It'd be great to get some pros input on what they think should be fixed on it, but that we need them to not be like huge, like, nah, fuck it, just burn it down. We might need it here, you know?
Generally, I think it's a lot of positions that feel like, even if you look at both, I even look at A, like both sides just have so many positions where you are either committing to a retake or you're committed 100% to a fight, which doesn't really happen a lot of these other maps, you know, where you have a lot of positions that are kind of half and half. You can actually contest, but this doesn't really happen anywhere on Anubis. Like you can't really go back and forth.
There's no connector on Mirage where you can like take some duels and then fall back.
Yeah, exactly. Like everything feels like very committed to either one or the other, you know, and you can't really play between those two. So
yeah, I wanted to just quickly talk about 2 more things before we shut down the show. One is, why can't we have 128 tick sub-tick servers, guys?
Well,
is this real, or are you just reading this from the chat?
No, I'm real. Like, because I was thinking about it. If I was still a player at the top level and not like talking to Valve and being understanding to why they make those changes, I'd be pretty miffed about it. Because like, it doesn't, we had for the longest time, we had 128 tick servers. And then they've gone, okay, well, we don't want the player at home in matchmaking to have a different experience to what they're having on the highest level when they brought out CS2. And like one of the factors there was obviously like nades. But you had players like if you're playing Counter-Strike all the time as your profession, you can literally tell the difference between spraying your gun on 64 tick versus 128 tick, or like movement, right? Like you can tell. And it's like now we don't have a choice because like I think Face It made 128 tick sub-tick servers in the start, and Valve said fuck off or we will kill you, right? I don't know. That's obviously not what they said, but you know they didn't like the fact that Face It did that, and then we've kind of just accepted it because we don't have a choice. Like Valve are just enforcing it, and they'll go from the angle of but the majority of our users can't have 128 tick servers because their PCs are dog shit.
But it's like 10 years ago, that statement. So.
But that probably still is true. It probably still is true when you're talking like 1.8 million players. Like most of them don't.
Do we even think like 128? Does that even make a difference on the? I don't think that makes a difference on the performance.
Well, I don't know, but that's the reason they'd go for, right? But here's the thing: it's like why, when we think about this, Counter-Strike over the longest period of time from its infancy, it was a modification, and then only since CS:GO came out was there ever like something built into the game that people could like play as matchmaking. Before that, if you wanted to play, you'd play like community servers. Everything was a community server in Source, and everything was a community server in 1.6 and CZ. Only with CS:GO did that change, and then now we're at like the top end of Counter-Strike, and they've come in and they've done a lot for the scene, right? Like obviously the majors and the sticker money and everything like that, it really helps an awful lot, but why at the top end can we not have 128 tick sub-tick servers? Like why can't we have that? Like I don't care what the guy that plays matchmaking on a Friday night with his friends is playing on. I don't give a single fuck. Like we're talking high-end elite tier Counter-Strike. I want to play on what's the best. And if we can actually do it and we can play matches on LAN or on Face It or whatever, why are we suffering and having a worse experience because some guy plays on a fucking Pentium 4? Like I don't care that guy had, but the high end was always about, you know, pushing the game and tweaking the game. Like we had Z-Block. Like we would play, Source had a plugin called Z-Block that was there to like, why now are we just existing on it, man? Like I don't know. Like it doesn't make any sense how we've just kind of gone, yeah, okay.
Maybe Face should try again.
Go and get the fucking banned forever from running.
I mean, the thing is, like, you have to
related.
also think about it. When the game came out, people are like, "Oh, this game is shit. This game is shit. This game is unplayable." Like, without even actually trying to give it a shot and trying to like see, is this sub-tick thing, is it good or is it bad? You know how players are. You say one thing is different there and be like, this is shit. I don't want Molotovs in my game. Molotovs are
yeah.
You know, so obviously having two games just as CS2 launched, having both 64 and 128 going on at the same time, and you know, like placebo effect and all of these things, it doesn't really provide for a good feedback in trying to fix it and making it better. So I understand that at that time having to like 128 to 64 was not the way to go forward, but maybe we try again.
I don't think we'll get away with it. I don't think Valve will allow it. It's just sad. Like it is what it is.
Who's gonna stop you? You can just do it yourself.
What, and play what on your own?
Yeah.
Okay.
Start there. Start small.
And the last one that I wanted to bring up was to do with the stuff that's been all over Reddit today regarding the VRS forecasts on HLTV.
People would like today.
Yeah, have you not seen them?
Yeah, it's been. I don't know about all over Reddit, but yeah, it's been.
Well, there's been a couple of posts, right? So there's one that Vitality is guaranteed to lose VRS points in their match against Astralis. And there's another one. According to the HLTV, the Huns will gain 5 VRS points by simply showing up to their match against Team Spirit. That, to me, constitutes all over Reddit.
There you go.
Right.
I don't see anything.
I can just quickly explain that. I have to go kind of soon, so I'll just get into it. So compared to the last implementation of this, I don't know if people saw that we haven't had it up for a while. We made some changes, and it's got to do with kind of like the minimum placements because those weren't being accounted for before. So, you know, even if you place last, that can give you like some money, and that counts into the prize money. That's effectively the reason for the gains, even when you lose. So for like the Huns, that 5K that they get for last place, actually it does a lot, but it's only accounted for after the result, which we're aware, you know, isn't ideal because that just makes it look like, you know, by losing that match they gain points, which isn't the case. They just are guaranteed those points in the first place, you know, of even just being in that tournament, because there's just a few thousand for the last place that is actually being accounted for. I'm not entirely sure what's the reason for the opposite, where a win gives you a minus. I thought it had to do with decay, but I talked to the devs, and the decay doesn't really come into. It's not a factor because it's the same date. that it looks at both before and after. So there's no extra days that would like cause any sort of a decay. So we're just trying to sort it out and hopefully come up with a solution that is accurate.
So it's
like
an error
in
at the
isolation. So that's like it is actually in isolation what that match will like, what impact will the match in question will have, rather than certain things that work around it that play a factor, So just trying to figure that out and troubleshoot it.
It's important that like to get that out there, because a lot of the narrative is, oh, the VRS is shit, right? Whereas if this is an issue,
the reality is HLTV forecast
is incorrect, right? Like, and that because like you're getting people with like decent Twitter followings, like this Thor guy, like tagging people and being like, oh, please talk about this during the cast. It's like, bro, you don't even understand what you're fucking asking for. Like, let's get to the source, shall we? Let's find out what's going on, and then let's go from there. So this is an issue with the HLTV's forecast, and that needs to be fixed. So there we go.
Yeah. We have a lot of changes around that coming up, where we're also going to bring back like the live version of the ranking, like truly live, where we're updating it after every match again. Even though Valve's ranking obviously now works slightly differently, where it waits for all the matches, but obviously we want ours to provide some sort of a context for what match has what impact and all that stuff, and that comes as part of that. It's still a work in progress, so I don't know. It's not me who's doing this. This is the devs, so I don't want to take any credit for all this. But hopefully, we'll have something that provides a bit more value than just the post-event results.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it. I think we're done. Let's get out of here, shall we?
Perfect.
All right. Well, this was an early edition of HLTV Confirmed, brought to you by Skin Place. Head over to Skin Place, see if you're selling some skins, and Anthros. Check them out if you need a chair. We'll probably do an episode next week, but that's going to depend on a couple of factors. I have to travel into Lisbon. I have to see what the situation is like there as well. Internet did work here, so that's a positive. So we'll see. We're trying to get guests on a little bit more frequently, so we can see what we can bring around next time. But thank you for tuning in. Anyone else want to say anything? Say goodbye to the people?
No, I was sick. Sorry for sniffling on the show, and that's it.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. Skin Place. Sell items now.
It was more than a game. It was everything. Every single emotion on display. Not a moment missed. This was CSGO through the lens.